Hey, welcome back everyone to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 155. I'm here with my co-facilitator, Lionel.
Hello, hello, everyone. How y'all doing today? How you doing today, Mike?
I'm good, brother. Yourself?
I am well.
All right. For those of you who want to follow along, there's a docket in the description beneath the video. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. We will get started. All right, let me share my screen. Can you see my screen, Lionel?
Yes.
All right. Having technical difficulty here. Yeah. All right. So next article, first article on the docket is actually from NewYorkPost.com. Stupid website. New AI system analyzes body language to identify shoplifters. Should be interesting. A creepy new AI system could identify shoplifters before they actually steal based on their body language. Japanese startup VAC has start has developed software which it is already marketing to a range of retail clients that analyzes footage from security cameras to spot fidgeting, restlessness, and other body language cues that could be suspicious. According to Bloomberg Quint, the quote minority report style technology uses algorithms to analyze the footage and then alert retail staffers about potential thieves via an app, with the overall goal of preventing theft. The company software reportedly helped capture a shoplifter in 2018 at a convenience store in Japan. Quote, I thought then, at last, VAC founder uh, Rio Tanaka told Bloomberg Quint. We took an important step to closer to a society where crime can be prevented with artificial intelligence. The business news site reports that shoplifting cost the global retail industry $34 billion in lost sales in 2017. VAC, reported be, VAC reportedly began selling the shoplifting detection software this month, and it plans to be in 100,000 stores across Japan within 3 years. Quote: if we get into many retailers, whether in the U.S. or UK, there are very often going to be CCTV cameras or some form of cameras within the store operation. That's being leveraged. That's being leveraged by linking it to analytics tool, which can be then which can then do the same actual analysis in more efficient and effective way. However, a recent study from MIT found that artificial intelligence systems can exhibit racist and sexist biases depending on what type of data is used. Amazon, for example, has been slammed by lawmakers and privacy advocates over bias in its AI based facial recognition system. Vax founded and said his company is just discovering the market potential of its systems. This is interesting because, as the article pointed out, it can lead to a lot of racial implicit bias, especially if it's not tuned correctly, and depending on who you sell it to. Um, potentially a person with a hijab or a niqab or even a dashiki for that matter, could be potentially suspicious because the way the software was written, the way the artificial intelligence was written, algorithmically speaking, it would actually have a lot of false positives. And I can't imagine that you stop pulling people from Walmart or Target or something like that, you know, accusing them of stealing something if they have not stolen anything, and then that hurts your business, that hurts your whole entire brand. This is very very much a potential for a lot of lawsuits.
Yeah, I remember on numerous occasions you spoke about how AI is, well, can be coded to be biased because of the sample that they're feeding the code. The code is only as truthful as the information that's put in on it.
Hmm.
So it can be biased toward those people that wear these certain clothing, people of a certain racial background, people that live in a certain area, geographical location, so forth and so forth. And I've even seen videos that talks about this, of being careful because the AI is not a benevolent piece of coding that treats everyone equally.
Hmm.
It's only as good as the code and whatever is being input in it, meaning the coders, if they put information in it, then it goes and abides by that.
Hmm. Right. If you have, because regardless if the software was written to be malicious or not, if you have too many false positives, what that's going to do to your brand and what it's going to do to your business is going to really hurt it. Because you stop falsely accusing people of things, whether you can blame the AI or something else. Um, People aren't. That's not going to sit very well, especially with social media. So all somebody has to do is pull out their phone and make a scene, go live with it because they're being falsely accused and targeted by some artificial intelligence. That could really destroy your brand. Especially with the retail stores closing now, would it really be worth it? If I'm going to close my store in 6 months, am I really worried that much about implementing expensive software to catch shoplifters for a store that's going to potentially shut down in 6 months? I don't know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah, especially with social justice warriors. This is just this can be some just another thing that they can rail against. You know.
Hmm. And plus, what's the loss prevention specialists or the loss prevention officials that's already involved in all of this? Um, what's wrong with the traditional way of doing business, right? Um, you follow somebody around, you use the TV, the closed caption TV, or closed circuit TV, sorry, and you're using your human intuition to actually determine whether or not there's a potential shoplifter in the store. Do I really want to spend $100,000+ to catch a person who's stealing a $3 pack of gum? Where's the return on investment in it?
Oh, my bad. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Hmm. All right, we'll get to the next one. And limited resources, African technologists are only accelerating their research. Can they make AI work for the continent? Hmm. Techmunde, or yeah, Techmunde, Afanja was interested in artificial intelligence for years. She just wasn't sure there was a name for it. I didn't know there was what it was called at the time, she says. Instead, the 24-year-old Nigerian got as close to as artificial intelligence as she knew how and threw herself into an engineering degree. Over a chance discussion, Over a chance discussion about NASA's Curiosity robot, she decided to learn about robotics and taught herself to code with online classes like MIT's Introduction to Python. That led her that led her internship with Kudi dot AI, a startup building finance app. A trip last year to a data science conference in Nairobi where she met then Microsoft researcher uh, Timnit Jibril and other African academics crystallizing everything. That was the ultimate moment for me, our phone just said. She came back to Lagos, quit her internship, and dedicated herself to AI, including starting a local chapter of AI Saturdays, a free 16-week free class that helps anyone learn about artificial intelligence. 40 people signed up, and the initiative helped get her a job at InstaDeep, an African AI company. At Artificial Intelligence Saturdays, Afunja and a group of volunteers built their own app, ChowNet, a system that identified Nigerian foods that takes inspiration from ImageNet, a data set that underpins many of the deep learning advances over the last half decade. Artificial Intelligence Saturdays Lagos welcomed its third cohort in January. Over 800 people who tried to sign up, although the space where they are able to crowdfund only holds about 100. The interest and progress of Fonja sees with students at Artificial Intelligence Saturdays and the rest of the work being done in technology hubs and universities across the continent gives her hope that African researchers can have a bright future in artificial intelligence. We could compete, she says. Artificial intelligence is something Africa could be could do along with everyone else. But competing won't be easy. Afunja's work on ChowNet earned her a presenter spot in at the Black in AI workshop at last year's uh, NeurIPS. One of the most prominent, one of the most, I should say prominent, one of the most prominent AI conferences in the world, or preeminent, sorry, preeminent AI conferences in the world. The conference marked a milestone for AI in Africa more widely. 2018 was the first time research papers from an African institution was accepted for presentation at NeurIPS main track since the conference began 31 years ago. Over 8,500 attendees converged on Montreal for academic talks, conversations with job recruiters, and social events. Afonja would have been among them had the visas of Afonja and over 100 of the African researchers had not been denied or not processed in time. She ended up having to do her presentation in a video call, via a video call. Countries that don't welcome African researchers, even for conferences, are missing out. The vast majority of cutting edge AI is still done in places like Silicon Valley, London, and Shenzhen. But the fight for AI talent is real, and the rest of the world is starting to catch up, starting to notice the the rich artificial intelligence possibilities in Africa. Google just opened up an AI research lab in Accra, Ghana. AI from SingularityNet, one of the companies behind the controversial Sophia robot, has an office in Ethiopia, a growing hotspot for artificial intelligence research. With more local partnerships in the works, organizers of a major AI conference, the International Conference on Learning Representations, said in November that 2020 event will be held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia in an effort to strengthen collaboration with scientists across Africa. Quote, Africans aren't sitting by, says Kareem Bigjor, the founder of InstaDeep. 5 years ago, he left his finance job in London and returned to his native native Tunisia to launch InstaDeep with two laptops. Now the company has five offices across the continent and just closed its Series A funding for $7 million. They are taking part. This is a really, really long article, but I don't really want to read too much more because you should read it for yourself. Lionel, you're somebody who's decided to learn online blockchain and other other programming languages. Do you have anything you want to add to this? I know. Are you there? Can anybody hear me in the chat? Push one if you can hear me. Okay, Dave says he can hear me, so not sure what's going on with Lionel. Lionel, can you hear me? All right. I don't know what's going on. Give me a few seconds. Let me figure out what's going on with Lionel.
Yeah. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, are you? Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Yeah. 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 My bad. My bad. Yeah. Yeah. This is my- Yeah. This article is interesting because yes, I do take online classes for coding, geared toward blockchain, more specifically Python. Um, the class I'm taking is with Udacity. Now, I will admit, she took to this seemingly per the article. I'm sure that it took a couple of years, but it she took to this and ran with it. Um, I know AI and blockchain use the Python coding language in a lot of instances. Um, I I want to get on her level. Obviously I'm in more of the field of blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and she's more in the field of AI. But she and the other person in the article is doing amazing things. Amazing things. I didn't know that they had an office in Ghana. Uh, Who the people that do Sophia again? I forgot already. They have an office in Ghana. I didn't know that. Um,
Right.
wow, it's and obviously this shouldn't be too surprising because in other articles we went over how in Kenya they're using um, Kenyans to map out images of things for artificial intelligence, and other articles saying that how there are incubators in Kenya, startups across the continent, and so forth. But this particular article, it seemed like both of them are hitting the ground running. Um, you can see how 850 people showed up for a place that can only fit 100 people. Yeah, this is amazing. This is great.
Right. And what I find interesting is that she met somebody from Microsoft as a researcher, and other companies are partnering on the continent with startups to get that integration, right? That sort of diversity that we spoke about on Friday that people want to deny that companies are actually looking for this, which is what infuriates me because we have these discussions. They say, "Oh, well, if I'm running a company, I'm looking for the bottom line." Well, what about these companies? Why are they on the continent? If there's no running water and there's no sewage system, how do you explain that? Why these companies are running over this and partnering with these startups and getting with all these people on the continent? This doesn't make any sense what you're saying. Um, but again, look at the initiative that she took. She quit her internship just to go ahead and go do this. That takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of gumption too. So um, when you think about the amount of effort that she wanted to get into this, but she didn't understand what it was. Didn't know there was a name for it, and now she found out there was a name for it. She put one and one together, went online, and did her due diligence like many other people, and then she started her own quote unquote African brain trust. So now you see Africans taking that initiative, and you also see that they're years ahead. You got a guy with two laptops who started his own, who quit his Wall Street job, his Wall Street London banking job to get into this with two laptops, and now they have five offices. But that's what I've been telling people before, that you can actually do this. This is possible. We gave the resources out. We gave out EDX. We gave out Udacity. We gave out the certifications and the books to study and the research on Indeed and LinkedIn. What more can we say?
Yeah, my bad. I was talking and I'm having a problem with this mute. Um, yeah, she took the initiative. She took the gumption. It is possible. Me personally, a few months ago, maybe last year, didn't think it was possible. Only because I didn't know how easy it was, the pathways to go to. And when people hear these things of getting into coding, IT, and these other industries, we automatically think that it's hard. You have to go to MIT. You have to go to these Ivy League schools to get this high level training, high level education in order to get in these specific type of fields when you really don't. And once I knew that information that you don't, I didn't have to get this high level education to go and get into these fields because these fields sounds like they're technical, sounds like they are high tech. Just listening of, oh, I'm in artificial intelligence, it's to a lot of people it's a barrier. You know, they think, oh, you have to know all these things, and they almost look upon you as if you're a god, you know, some type of demigod, because you are coding for artificial intelligence. But once those high thought barriers are torn down, and they, not all people, but people are told, hey, these are the ways you can get into this and learn about it. it becomes easier. Now for her, she did her due diligence. She um, one or two people that she spoke to opened her mind into knowing these things, and that's all it takes. That's all it took with me
Right,
also.
right, right. And now she's doing her own thing. Now she's running her own brain trust and she's doing big things now. So shout outs to them. Shout out to her. Um, there's so much that can come out of this. You got to read the whole article to really understand it. Really good stuff. In terms of fourth industrial revolution, technologies and infrastructure being put in place. This is digital infrastructure, and um, you and I talked about this before, but Africans are 10 years ahead. But according to this article, they're probably about maybe 25 years ahead of African Americans at best. Because I don't hear any black people on YouTube talking about this. If we're going to use YouTube as a barometer, they're not talking about this at all.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think YouTube can be used as a microcosm of the more larger community, and if that's the case, it doesn't look good at all.
Yeah. Dave has a question in the chat. He says, "I wanted to ask: is full stack web development a good field to get into?" It is, and then it isn't. So if you're going to stop at web development, that's not that's not going to have any scalability. Full stack web development is usually where people start at, but where everything is going now is it's going to be microservices, containerization, um, and what do you call it? Back end development. So you're going to have to be writing up some code for Java or writing up some code for Node.js. Node.js is Node JavaScript. So that's the client to server development on in terms of JavaScript. So if you're going to be a full stack developer, you got to think about what are your endpoints and what are your clients are going to be. Your clients are going to be mobile devices. Samsung Galaxy Note uses the pen, developing web applications around that. The new Samsung Galaxy Fold and all these other fold-based phones coming out, you're gonna have to develop applications around that. Smartwatches that use Google Wear OS, you're gonna have to develop applications around that too. So you have to think about the whole entire ecosystem and not just the front end. You got to think about the back end. You got to think about middle tier. Middle tier would be blockchain, containerization, microservices, serverless computing. But yeah, we get to the next article. All right, this one is from Harvard Business Review. How will we prevent artificial intelligence-based forgery? Recent developments in artificial intelligence point to an age where forgery of documents, pictures, audio recordings, videos, and online identities will occur with unprecedented ease. Artificial intelligence is poised to make high fidelity forgery inexpensive and automated, leading to potentially disastrous consequences for democracy, security, and society. As an artificial intelligence researcher, I'm here to sound the alarm and suggest two partial solutions. In February, AI-based forgery reached a watershed moment. The Open AI research company announced GPT-2, an AI generator of text so seemingly authentic that they deemed it too dangerous to release publicly for fears of misuse. Simple paragraphs generated by GPT-2 are chilling facsimile of human author text. Unfortunately, even more powerful tools are sure to follow and be deployed across. be deployed by rogue actors. Automated forgery is already prevalent on social media, as a witness, as we witnessed during the 2016 U.S. election. Twitter has uncovered tens of thousands of automated accounts linked to Russia in the months preceding the 2016 election, according to the Washington Post. Facebook estimated that fake news spread by Russian-backed bots from January 2015 to August 2017 reached potentially half of the 250 million Americans who were eligible to vote. I have called for regulations requiring bots to disclose they are not human, and the state of California introduced corresponding law that will take in effect in July 2019. This is this is a valuable step, but in international digital world, legislation has limited practical impact. The problem extends far beyond bots. Doctored images are commonplace. And recent advances in image processing has enabled the creation of realistic fake video. Researchers demonstrated this new capability with AI generated video of former President Barack Obama speaking phrases that were previously only audio clips. Then came deep fakes, AI generated videos of entirely new facial expressions of a target person created by stitching together two faces in an early convincing way. This face swapping technology is sufficiently available that it has started appearing in pornography, with several high profile celebrities' faces added to pornographic videos. A viral video of Obama issuing a warning about deepfakes was itself a fake. This is interesting. You know, the way you can combat this type of stuff is using capture. You know that system that you have to use to authenticate yourself to verify that you're not a robot. It's even difficult for humans to use. So I can't imagine that AI would actually, or AI or any bot-based um, machine learning attack would actually defeat that. That's usually pretty difficult to defeat. Everything you want to add to it, so I know.
Yeah, those captions are. I think some of them are purposely misleading. But I saw that video. The guy from Key and Peele, he does a great Obama impersonation, and he partnered with, I want to say, BuzzFeed to bring light on deepfakes, and he purposely, excuse me, did the Obama voice to let people know that deepfakes um, is a problem, is going to be a problem, and they created that video on purpose. As I was reading the article, I just immediately thought about deepfakes because what it is and what it can be and what people can do with it. And yes, artificial intelligence can be a great tool, but with any tool, people can use it for good and bad. And so, excuse me. And so, with artificial intelligence, yes, people can do bad things with it, and with it being what it is, the bad things that they'll do with it can have far-reaching consequences. But also, people are going to come up with ways for you to identify the fakes, come up with ways for you to identify when something isn't true, isn't real, when something is forged, when it isn't really that person. Now, I will say it's up to the person to heed those warnings, because even now, without artificial intelligence being prevalent with the with social media, people will believe something that's not real. So
Hmm.
yeah, artificial can be good and bad, but I do think people will come up with something, some type of ways for you to identify what's real and what's not real.
Yeah, I just want to answer the question in the chat from Dave. Dave says, "Okay, you think digital marketing can be taken over by AI? To a certain extent, it can. Um, you have bots in place that could actually push out campaigns, marketing campaigns for them. and they can schedule it out. So in that regard, there is some AI aspect that does take up some human interaction, but not all of the content that's going to be curated and created actually has to be AI based. It's actually still going to be human driven because only humans can actually create that sort of art form. You know, the graphics and things like that that has to be done from a human's perspective because only humans can really understand their target audience. AI can only reach the audience that it based on information that's given to it. But it can't ever draw a picture. It can never simulate. Let's say Malcolm X, for example, during Black History Month. It'd be impossible for it to do that because it doesn't have that information or that knowledge available. All right, this one is from ArsTechnica.com. Microsoft is first major cloud provider to open African data centers. Cape Town, Johannesburg cloud regions now available. A little later than planned, two new Azure data centers have gone live in South Africa. With these, Microsoft has become the first major cloud provider to have any infrastructure on the African continent. First announced in 2017, the company originally intended to open its facilities South South Africa West in Cape Town and South Africa North in Johannesburg in 2018. Even with the delays, Microsoft still beaten Amazon to the punch. An AWS data center is to open in Cape Town in 2020, as well as offering Azure services. Microsoft is going to use the facilities for hosting Office 365 from the third quarter of the year and Dynamics 365 from the fourth quarter. Microsoft is also investing in connectivity in Africa with a fiber network in reaching Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and soon Angola. The customer profile in Africa is perhaps a little more varied than in the other regions Microsoft serves. Early customers include not just a bank and a municipal water utility, but also Peace Parks Foundation, which is working to monitor and prevent poaching. The foundation processes tens of thousands of cameras used to monitor areas at risk of poacher activity and also intends to use expanded network infrastructure to relay radio communications to improve its ability to reach remote areas. The new data center might also one day provide relief to South African gamers who who have long complained of high ping times or poor online gaming performance. This is big. Anytime there's a data center being developed, that means that the data center is massive infrastructure. Anytime you have data centers opening up, that means there's small businesses that are going to feed off of it. Um, once you have once you have the data center in place, that means that there's power availability and that there's connectivity. So you have fiber rolling out or some form of copper, but in this case, it's fiber. And they're talking about wiring up the whole entire continent from Angola to Egypt to Kenya to Nigeria and South Africa. So if they're connecting those 5 or 6 countries with fiber connectivity, then that means that high-speed networks all across the continent from the north to the south.
Man, Microsoft is doing big things. Microsoft, wow. Um, to piggyback on what you were saying, A, I'm surprised Amazon hasn't gotten to any data centers into Africa. I'm surprised at that fact. B,
Well,
go
the
ahead.
article says that it's not till 2020.
Okay, okay, yeah, okay, okay. But still, I'm surprised Amazon hasn't put anything there yet already. Now, B, I don't think people realize the services, the businesses Amazon Web Service catered to, and I'm using them as a example here. Netflix is on there. Um, a lot of other people, major businesses use Amazon Web Services. I say that to say during the say 2008 market correction, a lot of the businesses that's here now wasn't there and alive during that time, wasn't big during that time. Now was cloud computing was coming online around that time also, right?
I just dropped out for a second. Could
I
you
was
repeat what
saying
you
I was saying
saying?
cloud computing was around during the 2008 financial crisis, right? It was starting to rev up.
Yeah, Amazon was the first cloud.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you said Amazon was the what?
They were the first cloud provider.
Hmm.
So Amazon was first up the gate. Cloud computing is a relative term.
Okay, okay.
Offering It's about offering computing services to from a robust standpoint, or managed computing services from a robust standpoint. GoDaddy used to be a go-to place for, when you wanted to host your web domain. Now GoDaddy is not somebody that it's not something that is even talked about anymore. Everybody just talks about AWS, but GoDaddy is now transforming themselves into a cloud computing company too. So just about anybody who was doing web hosting before can now become a cloud computing provider.
Now, cloud computing has allowed businesses to scale up. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes,
So, with the onset of these big giants like Netflix, Amazon, I won't say Amazon, boy, Amazon, Facebook, and so forth, that would allow Africa and African businesses, conglomerates, and industrial businesses to scale up also. Same with 5G. I know we touch on 5G, but the capabilities of 5G will allow businesses to scale up. So these technological solutions and technological infrastructures, like you said, they're talking about. I think the article said fiber optics, right?
yes. You need fiber
It,
optics for any data center.
right. So it will allow the continent to scale up, and next thing you know, you'll be hearing, "Oh, this business is this unicorn is an African unicorn," or you have two unicorns in Nigeria, a couple over here in East Africa, such and such. So don't be don't be surprised as in the middle of the next decade, you're starting to hear a lot of businesses pop up in Africa that are challenging and or taking over the businesses that you know now.
Well, the fact that Microsoft is laying out connectivity for fiber, they're connecting data centers. That's for connecting site to site relocations. And what that's going to do, everybody's going to have to pay, to utilize that fiber communications cable. Um, Once you have those areas connected, once they connect Egypt to South Africa, game on. It's going to be game on, because now all your banks are going to want to do business. You're going to see more. Plus, you have 5G coming into play. Once they connect Egypt to South Africa through Nigeria and Kenya and Ethiopia, autonomous vehicles is next. You're going to see a massive rollout for autonomous development, robotic development, drone development. You watch. Fiber rollout probably will take between now and 2025. So, in order for them to get Egypt and South Africa connected, that will probably take maybe 5 or 6 years. give or take. I know here in Massachusetts, it took like maybe about 10 years to roll out fiber across the whole entire state. Maybe from 2004 to maybe about roughly 2014, I think. Maybe 2012 or something like that. I know it was still, Obama was still in office when it was completely rolled out. But the point I'm making is that that's a good estimate and a barometer to tell where Africa will end up.
And I agree with you. This is going to allow it to scale up at a tremendous pace because not only are you connecting um, areas that cover a vast amount of land, uh, Cairo to Cape Town, but those corridors in between also.
Right.
Africa is a large area. If people look at not only a map, but the Peterson's projection map, it made Europe look like it just fits into South Africa. You know, period. And
Hmm.
you have a large, vast continent, which means more people. Africa's population is under 35, but the vast majority of Africa's population is under 35. And these people are growing up, not all, but enough is growing up knowing about cell phones.
Hmm.
They're they're um, they're a mobile based society instead of a sit down desktop based society, which means
No, desktops will go away.
right, right. There's really no need for to sell a lot of desktops and things there, which means there'll be yeah. I'll just say this is good stuff.
It's absolute good stuff, and now is a good time to actually look at Microsoft stock and actually take that into consideration because Microsoft doesn't open up. You don't open up data centers where there's no business. That means you have a projected idea that's going to be business, or you know that the business is already there. Now we covered an article just a few, maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago about artificial intelligence and Africans getting involved in it and actually becoming a major player in comparison to China, in comparison to America, in comparison to Europe, and in comparison to Russia. Um, they're not waiting around twiddling their thumbs. They're saying we're getting involved and we're going to get involved heavy. Microsoft is probably paying attention to all of this, all of these dialogues and discussions that's happening over there, and they're saying now's the time to strike while the iron is hot.
Yep, yep, and yep. And Microsoft not too long ago overtook Apple as as the world's most valuable company.
Hmm. Hmm. Because they do a lot more than Apple. All right, this one is from technologyreview.com. Once hailed as unhackable, blockchains are getting hacked. More and more security holes are appearing in cryptocurrency and smart contract platforms, and some are fundamental to the way they were built. Early last month, the security team at Coinbase noticed something strange going on in Ethereum Classic, one of the cryptocurrencies people can buy and sell using Coinbase's popular exchange platform. Its its blockchain, the history of all of its transactions was under attack. An attacker had somehow gained control of more than half of the network's computing power and was using it to rewrite the transaction history. That made it possible to spend the same cryptocurrency more than once, known as double spends. The attacker was spotted pulling this off to the tune of $1.1 million. Coinbase claims that no currency was actually stolen from any of its accounts, but a second popular exchange, Gate.io, has admitted it wasn't so lucky, losing around $200,000 to the attacker, who strangely returned half of it days later. Good Samaritan. Just a year ago, this nightmare scenario was mostly theoretical, but the so-called 51% attack against Ethereum Classic was just the latest in series of recent attacks on blockchain that have heightened the stakes for their nascent industry. In total, hackers have stolen nearly $2 billion worth of cryptocurrency since the beginning of 2017, mostly from exchanges. And that's just what has been revealed publicly. These are not just opportunistic lone attackers either. Sophisticated cybercrime organizations are now doing it too. Analytics from chain analysis, chain analysis recently said that just two groups, both of which are apparently still active, may have stolen a combined $1 billion from exchanges. We shouldn't be surprised. Blockchains are particularly attractive to thieves because fraudulent transactions can be reversed as they often can be in the traditional financial systems. Besides that, we've long known that just as blockchains have unique security features, they are they have unique vulnerabilities. Marketing slogans and headlines that called the technology unhackable were dead wrong. That's been understood, at least in theory, since Bitcoin emerged a decade ago. But in the past year, amidst a Cambrian Cambrian explosion of new cryptocurrency projects, we've started to see what this means in practice and what these inherent weaknesses could mean for the future of blockchains and digital assets. How do you hack a blockchain? Before we go any further, let's get a few terms straight. A blockchain is a cryptographic database maintained by a network of computers, each of which stores a copy of the most up to date version. A blockchain protocol is a set of rules that dictate how the computers in the network, called nodes, should verify new transactions and add them to the database. The protocol employs cryptography, game theory, and economics to create incentives for the nodes to work towards securing the network instead of attacking it for personal gain. If set up correctly, this system can make it extremely difficult and expensive to add false transactions, but relatively easy to verify valid ones. That's what made the technology so appealing to many industries, begin with finance. Soon to launch services from the big name institutions like Fidelity Investments and Intercontinental Exchange, the owner of the New York Stock Exchange, will start to enmesh block- blockchains in the existing financial systems. Even central banks are now looking into using them for new digital forms of national currency. But the more complex a blockchain system is, the more ways they are to make mistakes while setting it up. Earlier this month, the company in charge of Zcash, a cryptocurrency that uses extremely complicated math to let users transact in private, revealed that it had secretly fixed a subtle cryptographic flaw, accidentally baked into the protocol. An attacker could have exploited it to make unlimited counterfeit Zcash. Fortunately, no one seems to have actually done that. The protocol isn't the only thing that has to be secured. To trade cryptocurrency on your own or run a node, you have to run a software client, which can also contain vulnerabilities. In September, developers of Bitcoin's main client called Bitcoin Core had scrambled to fix a bug, also in secret, that could have let attackers mint more Bitcoin than the system is allowed to. The system is supposed to allow. Still, most of the recent headline grabbing hacks weren't attacks on the blockchains themselves, but on the exchanges, the websites where people can buy, trade, and hold cryptocurrencies. Many of these, many of those heists could be blamed on poor security practices. That changed in January with the 51% attack against Ethereum Classic, the 51% rule. Susceptibility to 51% attacks is inherent to most cryptocurrencies. That's because most are based on blockchains that use proof of work as their protocol for verifying transactions. In this process, also known as mining, nodes spend spend vast amounts of computing power to prove themselves trustworthy enough to add information about new transactions to the database. A miner who somehow gains control of a majority of networks' mining power can defraud other users by sending them payments and then creating an alternative version of the blockchain in which the payments never happen. This new version is called a fork. The attacker who controls most of the mining power can make the fork the authoritative version of the chain and proceed to spend the same cryptocurrency again. For popular blockchains, attempting this sort of heist is likely to be extremely expensive. According to the website Crypto 51, renting enough mining power to attack Bitcoin would currently cost more than $260,000 per hour. But it gets much cheaper quickly as you move down the list of more than 1,500 cryptocurrencies out there. Slumping coins, slumping coin prices make it even less expensive since they cause miners to turn off their machines, leaving networks with less protection. What do you think about this, Lino?
excuse, excuse me. I know exactly what they're talking about. A blockchain is hacked when it's not decentralized enough. When you have in a proof of work protocol where your voting ability comes from is equal to the processing power of your computer. Meaning, if excuse me, hackers can obtain more processing power, then they can take over. Only thing they need is 50% or 51%, which calls 51% attack of a proof of work protocol blockchain. An example of a proof of work protocol blockchain is Bitcoin. The problem is with Ethereum Classic, it wasn't decentralized enough, meaning not many people held a copy of the blockchain to secure the blockchain because when a lot of people, millions of people have a copy of that blockchain and you want to perform an attack on that blockchain, you have to convince everyone that holds a copy of that blockchain on their computer that the blockchain that they're on is not the correct blockchain, which means you're paying a lot of money to buy more and more processing power, more and more CPUs or ASICs in order to have more processing power than the people that hold a copy of that blockchain. That's why it's expensive to perform a 51% attack against Bitcoin because so many people hold a copy of that blockchain. But like the article said, the lower you go down on the cryptocurrency list, according to coin market cap, the easier it becomes. And when a blockchain isn't decentralized enough, meaning more people hold a copy of the blockchain, then it's cheaper and easier for a hacker or hackers to come pull their resources together in order to, excuse me, in order to hack that blockchain. Now you don't want to go too far down and try to hack a coin that isn't popular. You want to be in that middle zone. So Ethereum Classic was in that middle zone, and it was susceptible because it's a down market. People who miners who mine on the blockchain, it costs money to mine, electricity, power, energy. But the reward is that coin that they're mining. Then they can turn around and sell that coin for profit. But if the price of the coin is low and your reward that you're getting and the price of the coin is low and it doesn't give you profit to keep have your computers on to mine it, then no one is going to mine it. People are going to turn their computers off because they're losing money. which means less and less people hold copies of that blockchain and are mining that blockchain, which makes that coin, that blockchain, susceptible to attacks. So that's what they're talking about. Now, once a lot of these coins that's in the Goldilocks zone and Bitcoin, once it becomes more and more adapted, which we're seeing now, then it gets even more expensive to hack these blockchains because more and more people are holding a copy of that blockchain, which means you have to convince everyone that holds a copy of that blockchain, 51% or more, at least 51%, that what the blockchain you're working on is the real blockchain, and it costs money because of the energy and electricity to do that. That's why they say it costs, I think they said $250,000 an hour at least in order to have a chance to hack Bitcoin's blockchain. That's a
Hmm.
lot of money. It's not worth it.
Yeah, there's ways of mechanizing a security posture for blockchain. Few ways you can do you can go about it. Some common things that are already available, and then there's software as a service and other services inside of AWS and even Microsoft's new Sentinel, which is a new security product that came out a few weeks ago. Um, so there's ways of going about it. You got to be a security professional first, and worry about the blockchain second. You know, blockchain is just a piece of digital infrastructure. It is a distributed ledger technology. So you have to keep that in mind that just because it's blockchain doesn't mean that it's secure. Um, if a bad guy wants it bad enough, then they will go after it. And as
Hmm.
we've seen in the article, and as Lionel mentioned, that this is possible. So you have to keep that in mind that a lot of people see blockchain as being invincible, and it's really not. It's only as good as it's implemented.
Yeah. What's going on, Jack Charles? How you doing?
I'm
Hey, what's
doing
going on,
well.
Jack?
Good going on. Good evening, brothers. Um, I'm just listening right to what you're explaining, Lionel, and I'm seeing like, for one thing I got out of it was for the side of the blockchain, um, kind of like the blockchain is not in, it's still in the infantry stages, right? It's not really in full implement to everyone on with certain currency. But my only issue is that when these counts of thefts happen, right? Where people take, $2 million or $1 million or $100,000, do they get reimbursed? Does anybody reimburse them for certain people for the loss, or it's just it's how things go, or are they working on you know ensuring um um these acts of theft? Like, are they going to
Yeah.
insure these people?
Right now it's the Wild Wild West. There's some exchanges like Gemini, Coinbase, and Fidelity that insures people, the FDIC insurance, up to a certain amount where they have custody, where you keep your crypto with them in their vault storage. And if they lose your crypto, then they have to reimburse you at the um the monetary value it was when it was stolen. But if you're keeping it yourself, because Bitcoin, well, in cryptocurrency, you can become your own bank, then you have to watch out. You have to know the risks, the security, and all that. So right now, if someone like I got hacked, I'm not getting that back. So I learned. That was a hard lesson to learn. I learned, and as time goes on, and what I was hacked for, as those prices goes up, it's going to become more and more and more of an expensive lesson. But I know better now.
And for you, Mike, I know you deal with cybersecurity. Do you think um how many years do you think in the future is going to take for this to get more like felt like more secure? Because it seemed like there's a lot of openings, you know, in this type of market. So like, how long is it going to take before it gets really secure? Because you talking about $2 billion. That's a lot of money in one
Well,
year.
it, yeah, it's $2 billion because that's what it was evaluated at. But who knows what happened to the value when it crashed, right? When Bitcoin took a dip, from 20,000 back down to 4,000, right, back to 5,000. So we don't know really what the true value of that loss expectancy was. But from a security standpoint, you're asking when how long do I think it will take? Probably about 9 months. Probably about that.
Why do you think 9 months? Why you come with that figure?
That's usually the life cycle of any sort of software development and methodology, especially what we call DevOps, right? So it's automating processes, the ability to automate processes repeatedly. They can actually turn this around in a matter of 9 months. See, blockchain is really about how skilled the developers are. So developers just throw up code like throwing paint up on the wall. Yeah, the wall's painted, but it's not. If it has a bunch of streaks and stuff like that, then it needs a second coat, or it needed to be primered before. The problem with blockchain now, it's in its early infancy. So blockchain is right now where Netscape was in 1994, 1995. There was no cybersecurity back then. Everybody was getting hit with viruses, or anybody could have been hit with a virus. No one really thought to secure their machines. No one really thought about encrypting their hard drives back then. Um, People were just happy to have the technology. They were happy to have a desktop. They were happy to have a laptop. As heavy as it was, they were happy to have it. But they never really thought about security. Security becomes an afterthought for a lot of development in the technology field because it slows things down. If you have to implement technology in place from the beginning, a lot of this stuff would be slow. It hinders a lot of developers because now they can't just throw up code as they want to. If you can just throw up code as you want to, then yeah, you get a lot of fast turnarounds. But in terms of where the security aspect, where it will come into and how long it will take, it'll take about 9 months. It's not hard to go out and hire a dozen or so engineers to sit down in the room and really figure this out. Sit down with some security consultants and really look over this and find out what the vulnerabilities are, and then implement the strategy and then execute. That wouldn't take long.
Yeah, that was a good article. It's I think a lot of people. I'm my brother. He's heavy into trade. I don't. I'm not really into that yet. But from just watching other people, it seems like it's there, right? It's gonna grow, but it's in its infancy stages right now, like just with the vulnerabilities and certain things like that. So yeah, but you gotta really get on it, because like um, seeing that, I think a lot of people are moving towards this right now.
Hmm.
They gotta tighten up on the security because imagine somebody put their retirement in there or something, and they get hit. You know that that can be that can be crushing. So they really got to get on top of this.
Those
Oh,
things has already happened.
yeah.
That happened already?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Those people lost a lot of savings in this because those, from what I've heard, those people kept their funds on exchanges, and exchanges is the number one target for getting hacked because people keep their funds on exchanges. Why people say take your crypto off exchanges. So yeah, people post on YouTube, hey, I lost thousands of dollars, 50,000, $100,000, because the most recent one was Quadrica. They lost a lot, hundreds of, over $100,000.
Hmm. Yeah, and the thing is, it's not usually the person who has the wallet. It's not their fault, right? It's the fault of the exchanges. The exchanges are poorly secured. There's no code review, and the blockchain itself becomes subjugated to the poor security of the exchange itself. So it's not the user that's at fault, and unfortunately, there's no true FDIC because the federal government doesn't really see um, that hasn't really classified Bitcoin as a true currency or as a true digital asset. It doesn't really know what to do with it at the moment. So while it does have some value to it, and the value becomes lost due to theft, I, there's nothing. It's a hot potato. No one really wants to do anything with it because even if it is lost, then what that's going to do is going to open up the it's going to open up the IRS to look into everybody else's wallet and start taxing people. And then you're going to lose a lot of value there. So either you're going to lose it to the hackers or you're going to lose it to the federal government.
I never thought about that. Dang.
Yeah,
So it's like, you gotta lose something to gain something. So I get what you're saying now.
invest into cold storage. I mean, that's the cheapest way of going about it. Invest into cold storage, either a USB key, a USB hard drive, maybe some form of cloud storage. But cold storage is usually the cheapest and most effective way to have security in terms of cryptos.
When you
Yeah,
say
I
cold, when you say
agree.
cold storage, that's like a wallet, right? That's what a wallet
Uh,
is.
It's a format of storage. So cold means that it's not live and connected. So cold means that it's like an external hard drive. It's just sitting there on the table, but in order for it to be active, it has to be plugged in. Hot storage will refer to live backup or live storage, meaning that you have actively write into that form of storage.
yeah, disconnecting to the internet.
Hmm. Yeah, and unfortunately, there's no literacy available for a lot of people who do want to get into crypto trading and holding on hodling on some of these tokens and these currencies. There's literacy for everything else, but in terms of like really securing yourself, people just buy crypto on whatever exchanges they go to, and they don't, and unbeknownst to them, they don't really know. They are putting full trust into that exchange and expecting that exchange to have their best interest from a security standpoint. And unfortunately, those exchanges, whoever developed them, whoever's managing them, are the ones who are at fault. Let me get to this next article. All right, next article is from electric.co. All electric GT unveiled with over 300 miles of range and 5-minute charging enabled by mysterious battery. Uh, Peak Automotive, a new electric car startup launched by Tony Peak, a descendant of Volkswagen's for, Renan Peak, a, is unveiling this week an all-electric GT with over 300 miles of range with and a 5-minute charging enabled by some mysterious new battery cells. The Peak Mark Zero is going to be unveiled in full at a Geneva Motor Show tomorrow. But the company has released a bunch of images and specs ahead of the show today. We have developed a sports car that we ourselves would like to buy, and we talked for a long time to many enthusiasts about what was missing on the market. We want we want to offer a modern classic that isn't subject to consumer cycles. The driver of this sports car should enjoy at any minute they can spend in the car. The company claims to have built the vehicle platform with a flexible and open vehicle architecture to allow a variety of drivetrains, like electric drive, hybrid, fuel cell, or internal combustion engine. Yet they are releasing the specs for an all electric version based on the mysterious battery cells that enable a range of 500 kilometers, 311 miles, according to WLTP cycle, and a sensationally short charging time of only 4 minutes and 40 seconds to 80% battery capacity. Peak didn't release any details about how the battery cells achieve those kind of performance beyond claiming that the cells don't heat up. The special type of cell hardly heats up during the charge or discharging phases. Significantly high currents can flow as the cell temperature rises only marginally. The company says that the cells don't require active cooling, which enables which enables the lower the weight of the battery pack. This keeps the total weight under 1,800 kilograms, 4,000 pounds, which is still fairly heavy for a vehicle of that size. As for powertrain, Peak says that the vehicle is equipped with three electric motors. The front axle and a synchronous motor delivers 150 kilowatts, while at the rear axle, two synchronous motors produce 150 kilowatts each. They claim that it results in accelerating from 0 to 100 kilometers, 62 miles an hour, in 3.2 seconds, and a top speed of 250 kilometers, 155 miles per hour. Here are some images of the Peak Zero. So it looks like an Aston Martin to me. I don't know about you guys, but I think the front is very, very much reminiscent of an Aston Martin. Even the silhouette from the side. Um, the rear looks a lot like a. I want to say that the rear looks a lot like a Jaguar.
Yeah, I agree. The side profile do look like Aston Martin, and the top, especially the top right silver one,
Hmm.
and actually the bottom, the grill is Aston Martin-esque. That
Hmm.
if this if this thing charges up in 5 minutes, this can make electric vehicles easier to propagate throughout the automotive industry in terms of people buying them,
Hmm.
because it takes about 5 minutes to fill up your gas tank, especially from E to full.
Right.
So, oh, you got this, and with the mileage,
Hmm.
oh wow,
Jack, you have anything on this?
then he left.
Oh, well, um, yeah, 5 minutes is actually fairly it's fairly quick for a charge. Um, but it also depends on how it's being charged. So I know some of the new Teslas, they have two chargers, so you can actually have one charger on one side and another charger on the other side, and charge them both at the same time, and actually to have charging complementary to to your stop, right, to your temporary stop, so you can actually get a faster a rapid charge. Basically, that's what they call superchargers, right? So it's rapid charging. So you're talking 440 volts being pumped into your car. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. I know that there was some talk not too long ago about a new charger station at 800 volts, if I remember correctly, um, from either Volkswagen or BMW or Porsche or something like that. They've come up with a way to actually have a 800-volt charging station that would actually cut the time down to like 90 seconds.
Wow, now see that's good. That's good. So it seemed like they have to increase the voltage in order to allow the battery to charge faster.
You broke up. Say that again.
I say it seems like they have to increase the voltage in order for the battery to charge faster.
Hmm.
Now, does that deteriorate the battery after a while because
It will.
of the high voltage?
It depends. Depends on how the batteries are cooled and depends on how the battery mechanism is set up. So you have these charge boards that are inside that actually handle all that current coming into it. Batteries, depending on how they're designed and things of that nature, it could actually take that charge, but you're probably only going to get so many full charges out of it. So you deplete the battery when you drive, and then you try to find a place to actually charge it back up, and then and then you deplete it again. So that sort of cycle through depletion and full capacity charge again takes a toll on the battery itself. So it starts to wear out after like 500 charges, 500 full charges. So you'll probably see like 5 to 10%, or I'll be conservative, say 5% deficiency rate in your charging capability after about 500 to 800 charges, and then you'll start to see it go down to like 97%, roughly down to about 91% after so many charges, and then it'll probably degrade itself down to about 75% before you have to replace the batteries.
Now, I'm sure cars have sensors that detect, so, or software that detect, hey, your battery is degrading. You may want to get a change, like uh, it's included in your warranty, a new battery replacement at such and such charges or such and such miles, or whichever comes first. That type of deal.
Yeah, you have data analytics on board, so it's collecting all that data for the logs. So the car has an onboard computer where it determines your charge cycle and things of that nature. And then when you go get when you connect back to Wi-Fi or 5G or whatever it is, however your car is connected, or if your car is connected to Bluetooth to your phone, that information is going to be read out into a log, and then it goes into a database, and then it's going to, probably go to your service provider, not your service provider, but your dealership, and then they'll determine whether or not you need to bring the car in. No different than an oil change on your car, where it pops up like it says must change oil next 1,000 miles, or something like that. So
Now, I do remember going over something like that. We did talk about something like that, like the Internet of Things. When your car is has something wrong with it, it'll contact the provider or your dealer, not provider, dealer, and it'll contact you also at the same time. So yeah, okay, like Internet IoT type of deal. All right, I got you.
hmm all right, let me get to the next one. All right, the next one is from DW Documentary: Tesla and Elon Musk, the future of electric cars. I'm not going to play this video because I won't even sacrifice this channel for that. Um, I watched this documentary, and what I'll say to it is that Tesla actually has some questionable practices in how they manufacture vehicles. Um, People being injured, people being temp contractors, not being brought on full time. People who have worked there full time have left the company and go start their own projects. Um, the way it's being run is very questionable. There's no union involved. Um, a variety of things that most car manufacturers can't do now and have not done in the past. Tesla is actually getting away with it in order to produce more cars. People working 12-hour shifts, being injured from being overworked, or having machines fly about. Um, just a variety of things that makes me really question the quality assurance and quality practices of ethical practices of Tesla. Now, what is good about this is that people who have worked for Tesla have actually gone out to go create their own little um, alternative companies um, that have come out of this. So there's a lot of there's a lot of questionable things that's happening with Tesla, but there's a lot of good that's coming out of it from a human capital standpoint and ingenuity standpoint. People are starting to develop their own sort of contributions to the EV market just based on this alone.
Yeah, I would say Tesla has done a great job in curating their public image because from an outside person looking in, and I understand they've done this through marketing, advertisement, marketing firms, and design also. From a person outside looking in, you'd think, wow, Tesla and Elon Musk, he got it, he did it, and you cheer for him. You cheer for the underdog against the big Goliath. You cheer for him
hmm
because of how well they were able to curate their image. Now, with this documentary is coming out, telling a slightly different side, saying the injuries. One guy saying that it's not as many robots in there as you think. They're only showing the clean parts of these factories, and the manual labor that goes into it that's contradictory to what Tesla has said. Um, that's in their factories together, all together, compared to humans, compared to robots, it tells a different story. You know,
Mhm.
it doesn't all the way bury Tesla in dirt, but it smudges their name. And like you said, I agree with you. Was good that these people have gotten and received valuable lessons, valuable um, experience in putting together an electronic vehicle and knowing what it takes and knowing where to get the parts, the
Supply chain.
right supply chain. The documentary states that a lot of the parts come from Germany, so they know how to do. They have that mental capacity, and they are able to go about and do what Tesla does, but in a better, safe way. So that's the good part about it. Just like we talked about with the artificial intelligence article earlier, you think, wow, what Elon Musk is doing is something superhuman. You know, no one else is doing this. Wow, he got it down pat. You know, how I can never get into the electronic vehicle and build my own company. But with this documentary, it tears down those self built walls, that self built doubt. And people are saying, yeah, I work 12 hours a day, pushing in rivets, and yeah, they got some robots there, but it's pretty much the same thing, but you put batteries in the car. And then you hear that, and you're like, wow, it's not too hard. I can do that. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. You know, Tesla's getting away with a lot of things that, you know, I think if most of the, you know, OSHA, for example, if OSHA find out what was going on, then they would actually respond to. Um, it would hurt Tesla's stock. It would actually destroy their stock. So it's interesting to see what you know what's going on behind the scenes. But if Tesla wants to survive, they're going to be in for a rude awakening because other, you know, Porsche is coming, Audi is coming, Mercedes is coming, BMW is coming. You know, is actually a lot of parts inside the Tesla that's actually coming out of Europe. You know, through their supply chain. So what happens here?
Volkswagen.
Yeah, yeah, Volkswagen. What happens here is that Tesla only is Tesla is on borrowed time for the most part. They're great. I think they've done a tremendous a lot for what they for the little bit that they have. But you know, it's going to come a time in the next maybe 2 or 3 years, if other companies can iron out all the bugs, you know they're going to be pretty much you know unless a miracle happens where they come up with a better manufacturing process, you know they're going to bite the bullet at some point. Now this could be an opportunity for Tesla to get out or start to license out some of their R&D work and some of their patents in order to stave off a total extinction. But outside of that, you know, Porsche and Audi and Volkswagen and BMW and Mercedes, you know, and some of the new stuff coming out of China, it's going to put a lot of pressure on Tesla to survive, and it sucks to see them go away.
Now, what I will say, Tesla changed the public's enemy on, not public's enemy, the public's um, thought on what a EV electric vehicle looks like. Because before you hit the Prius, the Volt, those wasn't too appealing. Those were not even two. Those were not appealing to people who preferred the Dodge Charger and the Challenger and the Ford Mustang and the Corvette. Those were not appealing to that market. But now with Tesla coming out with the Model 3, with the Roadster, it appeals to those people and they see, well, hmm, EVs are not homely and old flower power type of deal. I can drive an EV and still look nice driving it. I say Tesla changed people's perspective in that part. But I do agree with you when these big manufacturers iron out the kinks and put the pedal to the metal in terms of cranking out these EVs. We see with all these e-tron vehicles, those look nice. That I saw the SUV e-tron looks nice. I saw the it was more of a sports car. I forgot the name of it. E-tron looks excellent. And you stated many and multiple times when Cadillac comes out with the EV Escalade, it's a wrap. The game is over.
Yeah, it's game over. Absolute game over. I have no idea what's taking General Motors so long to actually produce something like that. But once they come out with an electric Escalade, it's over.
Now they are thinking about partnering with Rivian.
For
Oh, excuse me, mass production of their cars.
for mass production of
Yeah,
Rivian or
Rivian.
Rivian mass producing something for GM.
Yeah, mass producing something for Jim. They're using their technology.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's a
that makes
partnership.
sense. That makes sense from a logistics standpoint because um, it allows you to borrow infrastructure that's already existing.
Right, and with the Rivian truck, the partnership is between supposedly. I'm not saying it went through, but supposedly it's between Rivian, GM, and Amazon. But with the Rivian SUV, they got some good technology, and they're manufactured in America. I think Michigan or Illinois, one of Michigan, I think Michigan. So GM can use that technology in order to put on. I'm just imagining here on a Cadillac Escalade
Hmm.
because it already gets great miles to the charge. So that could be something. I'm just saying that could be something. But I do agree with you if you come out not and not a hybrid Escalade, no, a
Well, they
total.
already have a hybrid Escalade.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Not I'm saying not the hybrid Escalade, but a total
Right.
EV Escalade that
Yeah, full
says,
spec.
hey, this thing gets 300 plus to the charge, and it only takes X amount of time to charge. And look at the design because Escalades already look futuristic, and
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, why it's I do agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what Escalade customers want, right? When people buy Escalades, I don't think they really care too much about the engines um, as much as they care about the luxury. Because if you've ever been in an Escalade, it's like riding on a cloud or something. You know, it's amazing. But what they've done with it. But you would have to change. You have to make major changes to that chassis to take on an electric motor. Because that big hood is used for an engine. You take the engine out, where are you going to put? You know, what are you going to put in that place, right? It can't just be some big hollow, uh, uh, um, a hollow space for that vehicle. It'll be it'll be from a weight perspective, it will be off balance completely. So it's something that they probably looked into many times. I know I'm not the only person that's probably said this, but I'm pretty sure that the people at GM have studied this stuff variously. Figured out a place where to put the batteries and things of that nature. Um, because it's also considered an SUV, right? So people want to actually do SUV things with it. Um, and in that regard, then you have to actually take into consideration that because if you're trying to create an electric vehicle, um, it has to have the flexibility of an actual 4x4.
Now, don't you think Rivian's design having them having their skateboard design with the motors on the wheel and the batteries as far low as they can put them for a much better center of gravity. Wouldn't that be conducive to having to escalate more balance?
Not entirely. So the Rivian design is a little bit different than what the Escalade would be, right? Or what other GM pickup chassis would be. If you start taking on Rivian's design and putting it onto an Escalade, then you don't have an Escalade anymore. It's a completely different design. Um, what I was referring to when I said it's an SUV, um, people who buy an Escalade have expectations from it, that they can take it off road too, if they so needed to. I'm not saying that the Rivian can't go off road, but you would be hard pressed to spend that much money on a Rivian, to go to Home Depot and pick up some cement bags or some mulch. That's not what you would actually use it for. Um, you wouldn't use it as a utility vehicle. You would just use it as a um, as a tech piece, kind of like an Apple smartwatch or something to that effect. It's just one of those things that the mindset is completely different that goes into electric vehicles than what goes into internal combustion engine vehicles, for the most part. When people buy a Ford F-150 or a Dodge Ram pickup, they're using that for utility purposes 9 times out of 10. So they're not
Oh,
afraid to beat it up. They're not afraid to beat it up because it's already been proven that it can actually do all of that. With the Rivian, no one really knows what its capabilities are.
okay, I see what you come from. They still have to cater to that market that who purchases the Escalade. They still have to cater to those people. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, Diaspora L says the Rivian is more than capable utility truck. But how do you prove that? It's no one owns one and no one has driven one. So how do you know that? Yeah, but that hasn't. He also says that it can trail over 3 feet of water more than a Range Rover and Discovery. But again, it's not in consumers' hands to actually prove that. What they say it can do and what it can actually do is two different things.
Yeah, you're just saying, it hasn't been tested yet. Yes, these are the specs, these are the manufacturer specs, but it needs to be in the hands of people who will beat it up to say, okay, these specs are off, these specs are, or these specs are right on.
Right.
That's yeah,
Right. You can't just go by their word only. I mean, you can use that as a reference to say, well, this is what they say, but you can't prove that the vehicle is actually capable of all these things. You know, Toyota had an issue a few years ago with a recall on their Tacomas with these bad was it the Tacoma? Yeah, it was the Tacomas. The Tacomas had a bad chassis, where they were rust under the chassis, and the chassis was no good, and they had to recall all of these pickup trucks. They had to recall all these pickup trucks and actually have people on this waiting list to have their chassis replaced. I thought that was ridiculous, but who knew that was going to happen, right? So there's a possibility that you would have took that off road and that thing could have broke on you.
yeah. I understand what you're saying, and that's common sense though. That's common sense. Yeah. Manufacturers of any piece of product, regardless, if it's car or laptop or phone, they can say one thing and something else happens, and you have to go through the call. You have to go through the callbacks and or the recalls and things. Just it hasn't been tested to work out the bugs yet.
Well, we don't even know what the utility purpose, what the utility strength is, right? Um,
Yeah, and we're just using what the and whoever gets it in their hands to really test it, to put it through, the field. They're using what they're going to use what the manufacturers say as a barometer,
mhm.
as a base. say, okay, it's supposed to do this. Let's go check it out.
Yeah,
That's yeah,
they're gonna put it through its paces. They're gonna put it through its paces. I mean, there's been many these guys who go rock crawling who take their trucks off road. Those things break all the time. So if you're a Rivian and this is your only product, what's gonna happen when someone takes that off road and a battery fails or something like that? That's that could be a disaster for your marketing.
yeah. And that's for we're not arguing with you. We're just saying, let it be tested first.
Hmm.
That's all. Let it be tested first. Let these YouTubers get hold of it and really, put fire to it. That's all we're saying.
Yeah, it's only it, most people take their cars to the mall. That's about it for in terms of off road. They go over a speed bump and they're like, "Whoa, Nelly," that sort of deal. But with the guys in the Midwest and the guys who operate in desert country and things like that, let's say CBP, Custom Borders Patrol, um, who take their Chevy Tahoes and their Silverados off road, along the border. Those trucks take a beating, and that's what they're built for. So you imagine if you take a Rivian off road or something like that and it fails, the company's sorry about that. The company is not going to look too good.
You don't think that they kind of like? I'm sorry, I had to jump off and jump back on. But you don't think when it comes to that car, I like that car, man. I know you're saying that, but car looks dope. But and I know you said that before. What are the reports? But isn't that like any other car you buy? Like, there's recalls on Volvos, there's recalls there's a recent recall on Subarus, right? So it's like, isn't that with all cars are like that, bro?
Not necessarily. So when I'm saying a recall, I'm saying Subaru can guarantee that their cars can have four-wheel drive. It's very rarely that you ever hear of a Subaru being recalled because of the four-wheel drive failed, right? That's what their bread and butter is, right? All-wheel drive, four-wheel drive. That's what their shtick is. Same thing with Toyota and their Tacoma pickup. The Tacoma pickup is well balanced. It has a lot of features. It does this, and that. But a few years ago, there was a major recall on rusted chassis. And if you took that thing off road, there was a high probability that thing could have snapped on you.
I had the previous car I had a conversion van.
Hmm.
It was a 2013 GMC Savannah conversion van,
Hmm.
and it had a recall because the the passenger side airbag or something with the passenger side airbag. I got a new car now, but I recently had a recall on my car, but I think that's only because of what I have on it, what I put on it.
Hmm.
There was a recall, so recalls do happen. Um,
Right,
yeah,
relative to the features, right? So you bought a car with two airbags, expecting that the airbags are going to work. Well, guess what? One of those airbags don't work.
Dang, you got a point there. All right, but okay, well, let's say that car. Right? What's the first step? When you want to have these new cars come out, they give out prototypes or like the first time model to like Consumer Reports, something like that. There's certain companies that do um testing on it, like reviews on it first. Is that what they usually do first, or just hey, we just give it to people start buying them and see what happens? It usually work that way, right?
So you have test vehicles, you have mules. Mules are things that are not released to the public, and then you have test vehicles. The test vehicles go to the press media, or what they call press-based vehicles, and then you have production. So you have pre-production, and then you have production. What the press vehicles are pre-production vehicles for the most part. Production vehicles are what go to you and I on the consumer level. What may not have been found in pre-production will be found in production some way somehow, right? Whether it's the Toyota accelerator issue, whether it was the Porsche 911s catching on fire, um, or Lambos catching on fire. Things like that will be discovered by the consumer at some point, and then they'll be forced to make a recall. But because they know what um, they know how many problems the car has that allows it to be sold on the market and pass regulations. So then they'll make the recall later on, right? They'll say, oh, well, in 5,000 miles, you're scheduled for this sort of maintenance, and then they'll fix it then, right? Um, Seatbelt failures and or something to that effect. They'll fix it then.
Now I hear Subarus have the highest um, recall rate.
Um, it depends on which Subaru it is.
I think all of them. All of them.
To my knowledge, Subaru is actually fairly reliable.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember any recalls on the SCIs. I don't think there was any. I think it was on the what was it? They had one recently. It was just on the I think on the hatchbacks. But they were like the older models. They were doing the recalls on those.
Yeah, yeah. Cause I could have sworn that I'm my bad. I'm trying to keep a straight face, but I was messing with Christian in the chat.
Oh, Christian, yeah, yeah. They did have one recall a few years ago for like I want to say like bad turbos or something like that, something to that effect, like bad turbos or something like that, or bad intercoolers or something to that effect. But that was for their high end models. But in terms of like the things that they're telling you, that's the selling feature. Very rarely do those features ever fail for Subaru or most of these manufacturers. But what I'm saying here is that Rivian is selling this idea of an electric SUV or an electric pickup truck or a SUV that can do this, this, and this. Well, what happened? No one has really taken it through its paces to really determine that. And I think what happens with these discussions is that people jump on the marketing to, but don't actually see the actual production use of it. And then when we find out the production use isn't what it's capable of doing, then then if you're a company, you have a lot of problems because you have to win back that trust. Part of the issue with recalls is that you lose brand recognition and trust with the consumer, with your customer base. Lexus. I think we talked about this before. Lexus has been number one by JD Power and Associates for like the last 20 years in dealership experience because their cars are so dead reliable and the dealership experience is so great that it keeps people buying another Lexus over and over and over. It's hard to get them out of the Lexus because the quality is so good. So Toyota has focused on quality first for their products. All right, this next one is from ArsTechnica.com. Shell buys Sonnen, Tesla's competitor in the home battery business. Now, if you watch that documentary that Lionel and I had posted in the docket um, previously, Sonnen actually came out. They mentioned in the documentary, Sonnen actually came out of Tesla Europe. So Sonnen actually makes batteries for vehicles and charging stations for Europe, for the European market. So the person who created the Sonnen as a startup actually came out of Tesla under Elon Musk. So that's why I was saying before, a lot of good things came out of Tesla. A lot of people, human capital and innovations came out of Tesla that people took to other startups, which is why I added this to the docket because I found it to be interesting that it just so happened to be in my feed a few weeks ago, but I kept it in my email. And when I saw the documentary, I said, "Oh, this is going to be on the docket." But I had no idea that that's where this company came from. I know you have anything you want to add to this?
Yeah. And Shell is mainly a petroleum and gas company, which says, hey, they are seeing what's going on and they're making a move away from oil and gas to more renewable energies, or even diversifying their portfolio to include those renewable energies.
Jack,
What's the like the market on like on renewable batteries and battery? Now, I know that wasn't there like a shortage of like the lithium? Wasn't like a shortage of that right now on regarding the batteries
you mean cobalt?
or cobalt? Yeah, is there a shortage on that?
It's not necessary. Well, it's a shortage relative to who needs to buy it.
I'm confused. Explain that. What do you mean by that?
If you're Apple, you're gonna get your cobalt for your batteries.
Okay.
If you're Joe Schmo, yeah, you're kind of SOL.
Okay. Do you foresee like a lot of like the market opening up more for, far as batteries? Seeing Shell is going into it. Do you foresee other companies going into that way or going in that direction? And if they
Absolutely.
are, is there a market? Is there a market for small business owners to kind of get a piece of the pie? Like, how do you how could we get a piece of the pie in that? Because of
Yeah,
batteries.
yeah. Exxon has all these companies have their own divisions for research on emerging technology. So that it was obvious that they were going to go after one of these battery companies that were alternative to Tesla. They want a piece of that pie too. But what the main fact thing is that they're going to start converting their gas stations over to electric stations too. So you don't actually need, so to get into that utility and infrastructure piece, um, you could start your own EV stations instead of having a gas station. You would just have a charging station. You would have like a dozen charging stations set up with a solar panel roof that typically would have been there over the gas pumps. That whole structure would have been turned into solar panels, which would be then driven down into the charging stations, which would allow you to charge people a certain amount of money per hour to actually charge their vehicle, or a certain amount of electricity kilowatts per hour to charge their vehicle, depending on how many kilowatts they actually need to charge their vehicle.
That's a really smart idea. I never thought about that. And it, yeah, that's really smart. If they push for this the EV vehicles, right? You're gonna need them on almost every corner, right? So I would think that.
Well, every certain distance, because
Yeah.
you have to factor in that cars come and go out of a gas station. But what happens when you have an electric vehicle? It needs to stay there for a certain amount of time to charge itself, right? So you need to have docking stations set up so that those cars can just pop themselves into it and be touch free, right? So in order for them to use that charging station, they'll have to buy like a Netflix sort of subscription so that they can just pull up whenever they want to. So
That's amazing.
people can't steal electricity too, right? So that the electricity is governed by subscription.
Mm, that's yeah, that's a great idea.
That's mega infrastructure development though. From an infrastructure perspective, that's mega profitable infrastructure development. So,
Because I'm
but then
thinking
again,
like,
people won't be buying electric vehicles anyways. Most millennials can't even keep a regular car now. I don't know if they buy an electric vehicle.
yeah, you got a point there. But I'm still concerned as far as the because I see a big part of the United States is this. I don't know, man. There's this sometimes you drive certain places, there's not a gas station to be seen in the next like you know sometimes 40, 50 miles sometimes. Where you certain areas like you're in like Texas or whatever. So um, what's the range on these some of these vehicles?
300 miles at best.
Okay.
At least for the new ones coming out, it's about 300 miles. That's on the highway though, right? Your long range distance would be determined on what kind of conditions the environment is in, whether it's winter or it's summer and so on and so forth. If it's winter, it's going to drain really fast because cold drains batteries quicker.
Mm, right. Okay. Yeah, but I think what you said, that's a great idea. You know, if you go incorporate a co-op with that, right, that'd be awesome.
Incorporate what?
Like starting a co-op um as far as
Hmm.
charging stations, that'd be a great idea.
Well, now you're talking about creating your own utility company, right? And I think we
Mm.
went over that. We went over that on Saturday with Lionel and Paul Bryant. Now you're talking about setting up microgrids. Actually, we went over that. Yeah, we went over that Saturday, right, Lionel?
Yeah, with the blockchain, power ledger, and the clear solar panels. That's the name of it, right?
Yeah, I think that was that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that, that's all. That's all early in the phase of development. But what I was referring to was the actual company that was setting up their parking garages or their parking lots with solar panels and connected it to build an infrastructure to actually charge
Hmm.
tokens and create tokens as value for electricity credits.
Mm. They had someone down in Africa when they created that there's a Nigeria where they created a power plant, right? Kind of the same thing. They tokenized the I know we discussed that before a couple articles, I think like maybe a couple months ago. That they did that in Nigeria, they did it like a power like a solar plant
Yeah,
and they tokenized that as well.
yeah. I think they I think there's a variety of ways you can use tokens and blockchain with that.
Hmm.
So I'm not entirely 100% clear on how they went about implementing that, but um, what Lionel and myself are kind of referring to is the the ability to set up a microgrid out of a parking lot and actually sell that electricity back to the grid and collect through tokenization and actually collect create energy credits and stuff like that. So there's a whole entire business model behind that that's actually
Already
attainable.
played. Yeah.
It's actually attainable, and it's not it wouldn't be all that expensive either because you'll get
Mm.
tax breaks from the state itself.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
All right, Lionel, do you want to read this Forbes?
My bad. I my ear went out. You repeat that. Which last thing you said one time?
Do you want to read this next article from Forbes?
Yeah. Let me bring it on up here. Bring it on up now. All right. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Forbes. It's the one from Forbes. Looking for, let me
Yeah, proposed NASA small sat mission.
okay.
It's the doc is in the description. It means the video.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay. The link was under the name, so I got a little lost there. Let me bring up my. Okay. Next article comes from Forbes. Proposed NASA small sat mission could be first to visit Pallas, the third largest asteroid. All right. Pallas, our solar system's third largest and wholly explored, wholly unexplored asteroid, is the largest for a potential small sat NASA flyby mission for possible launch in 2022. This remnant protoplanet, in fact, remains the largest unexplored planetary body inside the orbit of Neptune. Dubbed, I gotta get rid of this. Dubbed Athena, this small satellite mission spacecraft will be about the size of a mini fridge. but potentially have a payload of up to 400 pounds. It would share the same launcher as Psyche, NASA's planned robotic mission to the asteroid 16 Psyche. However, after launch, both missions would go their separate ways, and Athena would unfold its various bits and solar panels and begin its journey 2 year jour- okay, its 2 year journey to Pallas. Because Pallas is unexplored, it is a more compelling destination now for a small mission like Athena that is designed to pluck low-hanging scientific fruit. Arizona State University planetary scientist Joseph O'Rourke, Athena's principal investigator, told me. Pallas is fascinating as an individual object, he says, but excuse me, but perhaps most compelling as a missing link between the dwarf planet Ceres and Vesta, which after Ceres is the second most massive body in the main asteroid belt. We're competing against 11 other smallsat and CubeSat mission proposals with selections by NASA for the next round of development anticipated in mid-April, said O'Rourke. I'm tortured by optimism. Discovered serendipitously in 1802 during the observation of Ceres, Pallas has long been an odd protoplanetary duck. Aside from a somewhat elliptical path around the Sun, it has an orbit inclination of almost 35 degrees. That means its orbit takes it up and down through the plane of the ecliptic, the imaginary plane of Earth's own orbit around the Sun. Lying at roughly 3 AU Earth-Sun distances, or astronomical units, Pallas crosses the orbit of both Ceres and Vesta, says O'Rourke, but all three are in similar regions in the main asteroid belt. There we go there. What's the origin of its odd inclination? UCLA planetary scientist Christopher Russell told me that the likely origin of its high inclination is a close encounter with a similarly sized or larger asteroid. If Athena is funded, its journey with Psyche spacecraft payload would take it less than 2 years to reach Pallas. O'Rourke says the idea is to begin science observations within a few days of Athena's closest approach to Pallas. We track the spacecraft's radio signals during the encounter, but probably spend more than a month afterwards downlinking images. Wow, said O'Rourke, who made notes that communicating with Earth from the main asteroid belt is not a trivial task for a small sat. But the proposal launch has fortuitous timing in two respects, says O'Rourke. We encounter Pallas as it crosses the he said, he said, and we use a Mars gravity asset, stealing some orbit energy to slingshot ourselves into the asteroid belt. With a diameter of some 512 kilometers and gravity only about 1/40th that of Earth, Pallas is known to have formed in a water-rich environment. Thus, Athena's science goals include determining if Pallas might have a water-rich mantle and crust and learning more about high-velocity impacts on its surface. Pallas is also the parent of a large impact family, says O'Rourke. This includes many near-Earth asteroids and in particular 3200 Pantheon, a small near-Earth rocky asteroid that is the source of an annual Geminid meteor showers. What do we know about Pallas? We don't know much. Julie Castillo Roges, a planetary scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and an Athena proposal team member, told me. She says Pallas looks like a lot of asteroids with a dark surface, reflective, reflectivity, and evidence of hydration, in which water is chemically combined with minerals. But Roges says it does not look like Ceres, which displays evidence for ammonia and carbonates.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's cool. That's cool, I know.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Cube satellites before. Cube satellites being the easiest way to get into space exploration because it's cheap to fund. It has standards in place. You can download the PDFs. There's a whole entire document and white papers that are available for it. Um, it's just a matter of getting it off the ground. So I don't know much about you know this moon. What do you know about it?
I don't know too much about it. I heard a series. Um, I never heard of Palis, to tell you to be honest, but it's a protoplanet. It's real, very small, which means, in my opinion, there's a lot of large objects in the asteroid field that have water. And they say on this planet, the water, well, protoplanet, small, large object has the water has bind with minerals and other carbonates, and which means it's valuable. So very interesting. I'm surprised that it takes them that long. Really, I shouldn't be, but it takes them that long to download images. That goes to show how large of a space that is between Earth and the asteroid belt. And Earth is relatively close to the asteroid belt compared to the other six planets in the solar system.
Hmm.
So it's still very far away.
Now it said it had 1/40th of the gravity of Earth.
Yes,
What does that mean?
it means that it is very. How am I trying to put this? It's 40 times the gravity on that is 40 times less. If I'm stating that right, the Earth of gravity, which means you will, if you were to get on the scale, you would be 40 times less in weight. Um, if you, I don't know if you would fly away if you were to jump really high, or if it has just enough gravity to keep you as is. But the gravity on there, since it's a small rock, a small big rock compared to other asteroids in the asteroid belt, it does have little gravity to it because the larger an object is in space, the more mass it has, which means more gravity around it. Case in point, our own sun, but it doesn't have too much mass, too much gravity. It's only, like you said, 1/40th of the Earth's gravity.
Jack, you have anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, what was surprising to me, it said that it's the size of a mini fridge, but the payload is up to 400 pounds. Like, how's that even possible?
Repeat that one time. I didn't hear
In
everything you said.
in the article, it says here that let me pull it up. It says it was explained that Dove Athena, the small satellite mission spacecraft, would be the size of a mini fridge, but potentially have a payload up to 400 pounds. Like, how's that? Like, I'm trying to imagine like something that small can carry that much weight, you know, as far as a payload. So I
The
would
only
think
thing,
that, huh?
so the only thing I can say is the equipment that's inside it is dense and heavy, and
Yeah.
because you have to also think out, it folds out. There's a lot of things that fold out. It doesn't stay compact. So the solar sails and the winds and the solar sails that catch the solar winds and the reflect, not reflect, but I was about to say the radio antennas to beam things back to Earth. All that folds out.
Mm.
So I'm pretty sure they pack everything tightly in there. So I can see it weighing
Yeah.
that much, even though it's that small.
Yeah. This mission takes an immense amount of planning, man. You mean 2 year journey, uh, you know, to get to where it's going. That's a lot of year. That's a lot of planning, man. A lot of planning. A lot of um um. I forget think of the word. No, they kind of keep thinking like what could go wrong, what could go wrong. Like that takes years of planning for this. So I hope it's successful. It works out.
I can say, yeah, it does take a year of planning, but then again, if you're used to doing things like that,
Mm-hmm.
the pressure. You already know some things that can go wrong that they know things that
Yeah.
go wrong that we're not privy to that type of information. So that cuts down on a lot of worrying because they already know they have to plan for these certain things. Now, granted, it takes a while to get there,
Mm-hmm.
um, which goes to show how expansive this is. But yeah, to us, it is a lot of planning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, hey, you need me to hit that the other article too. Solar farms in space. Yeah, I might as well go ahead.
Yeah.
Solar farms in space. All right, this has come from NBC News. Solar farms in space could be renewable energy next frontier. China wants to put a solar power station in orbit by 2050 and is building a test facility to find the best way to send power to the grid. Hmm, interesting. As the green energy revolution accelerates, solar farms have become a familiar sight across the nation and around the world. But China is taking solar power to a whole new level. The nation has announced plans to put a solar power station in orbit by 2050, a feat that would make it the first nation to harness the sun's energy in space and beam it to Earth. Since the sun always shines in space, space based solar power is seen as a unique, reliable source of renewable energy. You don't have to deal with the day to night cycle, and you don't have to deal with clouds or seasons. So you end up having 8 to 9 times more power available to you, said Ali Hajimiri, a professor of electrical engineering at the California Institute of Technology and director of the university's Space Solar Power Project. Of course, developing the hardware needed to capture and transmit the solar power and launching the system into space will be difficult and costly. But China is moving forward. The nation is building a test facility in the southwestern city of Chongqing or Chongqing to determine the best way to transmit solar power from orbit to the ground, the China Daily reported, revisiting an old idea. The idea of using space-based solar power as a reliable source of renewable energy isn't new. It emerged in the 1970s, but research stalled largely because of technological demands were thought to be too complex. But with advances in wireless transmission and improvements in the design and efficiency of photovoltaic cells, that seems to be changing. We are seeing a bit of a resurgence now, and it's probably because the ability, oops, excuse me, and it's probably because of the ability make this happen is there. Thanks to new technology, said John Mankins, a physicist who spearheaded NASA efforts in the field in the 1990s before the space agency abandoned the research. Population growth may be another factor driving the renewed interest in space based solar power, according to Mankins. With the world population expected to swell to 9 billion by 2050, experts say it could become a key way to meet global energy demands, particularly in Japan, Northern Europe, and other parts of the world that aren't especially sunny. If you look at the next 50 years, the demand for energy is stupendous, he said. If you can harness sunlight up where the sun is always shining and deliver it to essentially no and deliver it with essentially no interruptions to Earth, and you can do it all and you do all that at an affordable price, you win. Wow, this is a that's a yeah, that ah we've been talking about energy since Saturday. about harnessing energy, these renewable energies such as solar panels, the ocean, using the ocean and the wind. These are first steps into renewable energy. Battery technology has been growing. That's seen with EVs having having the ability to keep a charge longer and to charge faster. Now with China thinking and planning and actively planning to harness the sun's energy, and I think people like know that the sun always shines, but don't think about it. But harnessing the sun's energy in space, not all of it, only enough where you can only harness as much of the sun's energy compared to the object that you're harnessing is. It can be built, how big it can be built. Um, they're not building the Dyson sphere, but harness this much energy and beam it back to Earth. That is the future. And you're gonna need people to in order to create this type of technology. But this is the future we're talking about. This isn't just science fiction. They're actively trying to harness this type of energy, and it's a
Yeah, this is
constant flow of energy too.
yeah, definitely, man. It's funny because it's like you're reading this, and I'm like, I know I saw this in a James Bond movie when I was a kid, So it's just, and another thing that comes to my mind too is I think this is something they could weaponize too. They're gonna weaponize this, you know, once they perfect this science and they're able to you know utilize the power of the sun, right, for the energy. Um, Once you open that door up, like there's so many other opportunities of use it could be used for. But this is way I didn't even think about this, and the mere fact that China's gonna go and try this, that's that's anything's possible. Anything's possible, man. Right now, I don't know what to say about this. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Mike, any comments on this one?
Yeah, my Verizon FiOS is having a lot of issues. That's why I dropped out. But yeah, this is a part of the infrastructure development that we've been talking about this whole entire space exploration thing. One in every three startups will be a space startup. There's at least 150 space startups in the United States right now alone. Um, so this is another piece of that puzzle of what can be done with the unlimited space and unlimited real estate in space. Cube satellites, big satellites, um, drones, lunar rovers, all types of things are going to come out of space exploration, and this is just one major piece. I mean, this is something that you only thought about in Hollywood or in the movies, but this is actually something that's in place. So
Yeah. And now, when you mentioned one of three startups will be space startups, that means a plethora of ideas and businesses. This is one of them. I think when people think of space startup, they think of these Star Trek movies. You going through space and just going places. No, this this is big energy. We talk about many times asteroid mining and other cleanup of these the space junk and other things that we can't even think of. This will be a huge industry.
This I'm trying to figure out is like, okay, um, your brothers are well knowledge on type of things like these, right? Like this, right? But how does someone find opportunities? Like, how does someone look at this? Okay, how can I make money off this? Like, um, will they have to kind of like delve themselves, like kind of study more intently on just okay, on the whole spectrum of all space exploration, or because the key is like you guys give certain okay, business opportunities, but how does somebody who's not, you know, as knowledgeable as like as you guys, to this type of industries, right? and try to find create opportunity there? Like, what did they start?
Okay, well, trying to bring it. I know we beat the drum on edX a lot. Um, Having programs geared towards space exploration, and just different certifications and classes, self-paced classes, having the opportunity to even pay for them, but they still cost less than a pair of Jordans. But these classes are geared toward space exploration and different aspects of the space race. Also, it's not only edX, but you're going to have other programs crop up. On no, Udacity is another one. Coursera. These these learning centers that will allow you to learn more about this space race and different things you can do within a space startup. Also, we always talk about having those complex conversations. You have to have the people to talk to in order to talk about these things, just like this, on this platform, Black Brain Trust. And also, you are the sum of the five people you hang around with. If the five people you hang around with a lot are not having these complex conversations constantly, then these conversations will never happen. And the more and more you have these complex conversations, the easier it will be. The more ideas that will pop up in your head and make those type of conversations uh, clear, easier to have, and less complex, which will drive you to start a space startup or find a niche. Because trust me, there's going to be a lot of niches in this industry. Say, well, no one is tackling this, and you'll then turn to those five or so friends and say, we can do this. We already had the conversations. We already talk about it. We already read the articles. We already go over the videos and so forth. Then you can tackle that type of uh goal.
Got you. Is there any like I'm not sure, but is there like a conference every year that kind of like where like different companies meet, gotta like kind of give like lectures or speeches on certain projects they're working on? Because I'm not sure what the name of the conferences will be for these
There's a
type of
there's a there's a bunch of conferences. Maker Labs has their conference. I think like 3 or 4 times a year they have their conferences.
Mhm.
There's a few space conferences that happens a few times a year. I think maybe Boeing hosts it, or another. I think maybe NASA maybe the ones hosting it. Um, and NISB has their own too. NISB has their
Mhm.
own as well. So not to the extent that we delve into it, but I think it's more of a pre-K through 12, to get kids into that area of thinking. So those are the real conferences that are really available. Um, but I think what Lionel and myself are trying to say is that you don't actually have to get anything off the ground. You just need to actually do the research from
Mhm.
a startup perspective. If you can do the research, then all you're doing is you're gathering the data points that's already available on search engines, and what's available in libraries of Congress and things of that nature. All the information that's already available, you're harnessing all that information, and then you're creating your own data points and saying, okay, well, we know that this planetary-like object up there has 1/40th the gravity of Earth. So once you start um, organizing all that data and creating all these data points, and now you can actually start to create your own sort of like your own mapping, geospatial mapping of space for your for your own agendas and your own objectives from a research standpoint. So you can look at the moon as a first off and say, well, what's the distance between the moon and Earth, and how much gravity is on the moon in comparison to Earth, and how close does the moon fly in between Earth, and so on and so forth. It starts to, once you start creating these sort of data buckets, and or these once you start implementing data science into
Mhm.
all of this, then you can actually leverage it to different uses. So now you start talking about building cube satellites and so on and so forth, and for what purpose, and lunar rovers and things like that. A lot of people think about, allegedly the first time the United States got to the moon with this big rover, and these guys were bouncing around, and they took a selfie and all this other stuff. Whether or not they did that, it's not what I want to focus on. But um, what I want to focus on is the fact that they were able to, think of new vehicles and things like that. So the research that goes into that actually is a business in itself.
I never thought of it that way. That's
Yeah,
true.
there's a whole lot. I mean, there's places on Earth that they actually use. I mean, I say on Earth, on this planet that they actually use. I think in Saudi Arabia they actually take a portion of one of the deserts and actually turned it into a Mars moon-like structure, and use the sand dunes as ways to determine what life would, what exploration would be like on a different planet like Mars or even the moon itself. And so they did all their development over there, which is very cheap because there's vast amounts of desert, right? There's hundreds of square miles of desert that is underutilized, so you don't have to worry about it being interfered with. So it doesn't cost them anything because it belongs to them.
Mm. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. It's just what in my mind is like let's say you create your own uh let's say like a space exploration think tank, right? It's primarily on just doing data research. Even on company does this data research, right? Just for as space exploration for like certain projects like that. That could be opening there as well to just using that intellectual resource in that arena. But I don't even think we even scratched the surface yet. When it comes to space, we haven't scratched the surface, man. Like this, what you guys explaining to me right now is like there's so much more that could be done. There's so many opportunities available. It's just that people need to wake up to them
Right,
and get on it.
right, and that, like Lionel said earlier, that got to have these complex conversations in order to get that innovative thought out. Um,
Mm.
a lot of the times um, you don't know where to even start at because you're not even having that conversation.
Yeah.
So you got to look at the look at it from the ground level and start from there, and really go to the lowest hanging fruit. As funny as it sounds, the moon is actually the lowest hanging fruit, right? So you can actually determine um, all the information. You can do a whole bunch of a data dump on, okay, what does the moon comprise of? How big is it? How much, how often does it rotate? Things of that nature. And once you start doing space modeling from that perspective on a whiteboard, because what we do in the IT field, we do a lot of threat modeling and business modeling. So
Mm.
we get locked into a room for 6 hours, and we can't leave until we finish. We might order lunch, but we're not leaving that room.
But
Only reason
explain to me what's a threat modeling? What is that
threat
in IT?
modeling
Like,
threat modeling in IT is basically determining where your most vulnerable areas are in terms of the enterprise itself. So
mm,
you're mapping out everything to determine where are your weak points. You have to map out the whole entire organization until you get it right.
mm,
What are the probabilities that you can actually be attacked from a threat vector standpoint? Something as small as someone walking by your computer and seeing that your screen is open and being able to gather information by social engineeringly walking by your computer and seeing your screen open and seeing personally identifiable information is a threat in itself, because there are people who can who have you know unlimited amounts of photographic memory. Somebody who has photographic memory can actually walk by your computer, get a snapshot of what's on your computer without using anything other than their bare eyes, and then walk away and dump that information that they saw onto like a notepad or something like that, and then send that information off to somebody else. That's an insider threat. That's a bad guy in your organization. So when I talk about modeling, business modeling, or even space modeling, this is the same thing in terms of um, what does the moon comprise of? What does Mars comprise of? this and that, and you do all the modeling until you're absolutely convinced and you're finished that um, everything that you need to know about those particular planets and moons and asteroids and things like that. You dump all that information into like a Visio or something like that, and then you save it, and then you come back 6 months later and you say, okay, what changed? What has changed since the last time we've done this? Paul Bryant, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
Brian.
Hey, you know, you were asking, where do you where do you get into it? How do you start? Like myself, personally, not saying it's the best, it's the best outlook. Myself, I sectionalize things. So for this for this field, I would look at it. Are you looking at software or hardware? Now, myself personally, I'm not a software guy. I'm not. I am, however, a hardware guy. So what I would do is I would look at where are the opportunities for the hardware. All right. Someone has to make fuel pumps for the rockets, nacelles, the control modules, the actual technical hardware, the computers, chips, boards, handles, valves, panels. Start there. Whether you're making an entire piece or you are a part supplier, start. That's one place to start. The opportunities are absolutely limitless. maybe you're making maybe you're making something that doesn't even go into space, but it facilitates. You're making parts for takeoff gantries. You're making parts for recovery pieces. You're making tooling pieces. There's so many ways. If you look at it as one giant pie, oh man, where do I start? Okay, just look at one corner, one part, and start there. Okay, but above all else, educate yourself. What I do is I thoroughly research anything for 3 to 6 months before I jump in. Start there. Research, research, research. The internet is your friend. So, while you're surfing Pornhub, stop, take 15, 20 minutes, research. Start there.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's good. The way you explain that makes a lot of sense because if you could start at something with hardware, right? Because not everybody is considered something a computer programmer or something like that. But hardware is something I think that you know a lot of brothers can get into, right? And then if that's a niche that can create endless amount of profit. So uh, yeah, I think you're right, Paul, on that. I agree with you on that.
Now, by the same token, all right, if you're looking as far as being an entrepreneur, because the bottom line is most people just want to check. That's all they want. Fine, but you yourself would be the entrepreneur. Okay, so if like myself, you're a hardware person, something else that I do. I leverage everything that I have, knowledge, experience, contacts. So, for example, if I'm doing hardware, I'm in the business. I have my employees. I have the people who work for me. I'm building X, Y, Z. I'm building space-based widgets. But now my thought is, okay, how can I leverage this? How can I dovetail? I'm building space-based widgets. Maybe I can also build space-built gremlins. Okay, so now I start to do everything that I can to also build that. But while I'm doing that, I'm gonna reach out to say, Mike, listen, Mike, you're in cybersecurity. What I'd like to do is I'd like to leverage our relationship and leverage your expertise. How can I get into the software and programming side? I'll reach out to Lionel. How can I get into the coding side? How can blockchain help me? So by leveraging those two relationships, I can then get in, I can branch out and dovetail over to the software side. So now I'm doing hardware and I'm doing software. And I would also want to say, hey, listen, let's start a co-op. Let's start a LLC. Let's start a partnership. Okay, I don't need to own everything 100%. Okay, I now have partners, so now we're all doing business. Maybe they, excuse me, maybe they branch out, they get their own partners, and they're all doing business. So now that separate business will also do business with this business that we've jointly created. Follow me? So that's a model that personally I use, I follow. I'm not saying it's the best, but it has worked for me. You know, don't limit yourself to anything. If you aim for the stars and you miss, you're still gonna hit the moon. So again, I'm not a software guy. I'm a hardware guy. I would start on the hardware side, but then over time, my eye is always looking to how can I branch out to also create additional revenue streams on the software side. If you're a software side, I was just doing the same thing, but don't be afraid to do the research so that you can then set these things into motion.
Hey, Paul, that was great. Hey, DE, what's going on?
Good evening, sir.
What's going on, Paul? How you doing?
Hey, brother. How are
I know you want to get that next article.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Share
think
my
DE
screen.
stepped away.
All right. Next article comes from University Today. T- The title. Okay. Meet W first, the telescope, the space telescope with the power of 100 Hubbles. Wow. W first ain't your grandma's space telescope, despite having the same size mirror as a surprisingly reliable Hubble Space Telescope, clocking in at 2.4 meters across. This puppy will pack a punch with a gigantic 300 megapixel camera, enabling it to snap a single image with an area 100 times greater than the Hubble. With that fantastic camera and the addition of one of the most sensitive coronal coronagraphs ever made, letting it block out distant starlight on a star by star basis. This next generation telescope will uncover some of the deepest mysteries of the cosmos. Oh, and also find about a million exoplanets. Strange Journey. In a recent white paper describing the project, W First mission scientists outlined an ambitious plan of this instrument set to launch in the mid 2020s. But NASA being NASA, don't exactly hold your breath on that. What's most amusing about this whole project, however, was that it wasn't supposed to happen. Throughout the decades, several teams had floated proposals for a new space based telescope dedicated to the mission of cracking the mysteries of dark energy. All those proposals went nowhere, and it looked like nobody was going to get their space telescope wishes to come true. Then, and then the spies came to the rescue. In 2012, the National Reconnaissance Office, the folks in charge of designing and building secret satellites, found that they had a couple huge telescopes just sitting around in a black site warehouse somewhere. So they did the saintly thing and classified them so they could give them to NASA to do something useful with them. The actual mirror and housing of the telescope isn't the most expensive part, so it wasn't some huge budget relief for any of the proposals floating around. But politics being politics, it gave the concept just enough oomph to get the ball rolling and turn it into a mission. W comes first and W first. And so voila, W first, short for wide field infrared survey telescope. The name itself is a little bit of a cosmology pun because the primary goal of the mission is to investigate the nature of dark energy, the mysterious accelerating expansion of the universe. That does it. Okay. Where's the pun? Well, since astronomers don't really understand the cause or even the properties of dark energy, they've taken to designing simple toy models to at least put some mathematical skin on the investigation. In this toy model, dark energy is imagined to be a fluid that soaks all the space-time, and like any fluid, it has a density and a pressure. What's more, you can define an equation of state that relates things like a fluid's density and pressure to each other. In the case of universe accelerating pretend fluids, it turns out that the ratio of that pressure to the density is a very useful number, giving you a sense of just how bad the accelerated expansion is going to be. And the symbol used to represent that ratio, W. So with this mission, W comes first. Planet Hunter Extraordinaire. Of course, when you have a world best camera attached to the business end of a client sized space telescope, you're allowed to have more than one science goal. And since this instrument will be taking lots of high resolution pictures and staring off into space for good chunks of time, it also makes for an excellent planet hunter. But it's not going to find planets using any of the traditional methods. Instead, it will use a technique called gravitational microlensing, when light from a distant star will bend around an interlooping planet, causing a brief but telltale flare in the brightness of that star. What's more, the addition of a chronograph all allows W first to black out light from those distant stars, enabling it again with its giant camera to take pictures directly of exoplanets. Two major science goals in one tidy package, courtesy a spy agency. Oh, did I mention that guest investigator program? That means that if your proposal is okay, I don't think. All right, so this is a great thing. The Hubble Space Telescope been doing its thing since I want to say
The 80s. It was 88.
yeah yeah I about to say the 70s, but yeah, for a few decades now we have the James Webb Telescope. It's been postponed a few times, but once it get launched, it's supposed to that is supposed to be far and above the Hubble telescope. Now you have this telescope, and what they're talking about of a planet, the sun light um, doing this thing. What it is when how it was described to me when you hold up a string with something attached on the end and you swing it around in the air, your arm wiggles. So your arm's the sun, and that thing that's you're swinging around, like I say, a rock on the end of that string is a planet. So when the planet, as much as the sun is tugging on the planets, making it spin around them, that large mass, these planets are extracting a small amount of tug from the sun. So when the planet goes in front of a sun, the light dims. And plus, when you're looking at it from a distance, both look the same size. So when that planet flies in front of that sun very fast, that light is going to dim a little bit. And that's how you can tell if a planet is surrounding, orbiting that sun. But now they're saying they can block out that sun and just look at that planet. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is a part of the whole entire space infrastructure that we've been talking about. Cube satellites, telescopes, solar panels, and solar arrays, and things of that nature. This all ties in with it. And I think as time goes on, it's going to be cheaper and cheaper to actually get your item to actually produce an item that's capable of having return on investment. We see cube-based satellites, the size of a candle, not a candle, but a size of a champagne bottle being viable, actually, having return on investment, for determining what the weather is in a certain state in the United States, or even for farmers who want to determine whether or not there's going to be a drought or something to that effect, or when there's going to be rain. Um, you're going to see the mass possibilities come out of this big research that's going on. Is going to make it easier for people like us on the ground in the black community to actually get on board, because a lot of the research is being done by them, but the cost is actually being reduced over time. So, and plus technology changes, right? So this telescope is what they say 100 times better than the Hubble. If it's going to be if it's going to be that much better than the Hubble, imagine what the next thing that's going to come out from this in the next couple of years.
So
Any
you
go
think that's
ahead.
a
Go
problem?
ahead.
It's just, oh, my bad, bro. You wanna say something?
No. I was any other comments? But go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. So you think that that's what the problem is? Just the cost of entry right now, because kind of like a lot of these big companies are getting into it now. Is just once the cost is reduced, then start seeing a lot more people just exploding to it, or you think that's what the problem is?
That cost is always going to be a barrier, but literacy is even higher barrier, because
Yeah.
you could always get money from somewhere else, right? Some private investor or some other crowdfunding operation. But when it comes to literacy, if you don't have enough literate people on the ground, you're screwed, because
Mm.
your operation won't really go that far because you don't have enough researchers. I think this is the perfect opportunity for to leverage things now, because if you go back 10 years ago, before cloud computing, you had to really set up your own data center. You had to set up your own servers and buy licenses from Microsoft, and uh, or go open source or something to that effect. The hardware was a huge endeavor financially on any sort of scientific research project. Now you don't have to worry about that. You can go straight to Amazon Web Services (AWS), or you can go to Microsoft's Azure, and you can spin up something for less than $100 that 10 years ago would have cost you 10,000. It's just that easy now.
And that's why I say in the future, having cloud computing in Africa will allow it to scale up at a high rate because it's much easier. The infrastructure is somewhat already there. They just need to use it.
And not
Well,
even just that. You're talking about taking consumer-based satellites, satellite dishes. Dish and Direct TV. Those satellite dishes are actually usable if you connect it to an actual amplifier in a in a actual box that's gonna pitch a signal.
yeah, the it's not so much the cost, it's the infrastructure, and it's new. Look at the very questions that you've asked. Where do I start? What's the roadblocks? Why is it not readily available? Why can't we this? Why can't we that? Now, if you look at those very same questions and look at them, the reason why you're asking those questions is because you can't just, it's not like, you know, dialing up delivery pizza or strolling down to the post office or going down to the mall. The It's so new. The infrastructure for it is literally being built alongside the actual tech itself. Okay. So when something is this new, just getting it rolling off the ground takes time. So it's not so much money, like Mike said, cost is an issue, yes, but that's not the number one thing. It's just it's so new. We're literally in uncharted waters. So it's like, where do you go? What do you do? How do you do what needs to be done?
Hello, hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
No, I can't hear Paul. He just went out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now.
yeah.
Okay. So, one thing they're talking about. dark matter and dark energy. All right. If you really, really press scientists and you ask them about the attractive force between electrons and molecules and the attractive force that we call gravity. And if you really press them on it, they'll admit they honestly don't know. Right? We can observe the effects of it. We can observe the force of it. We can counteract it in certain ways, but they really don't know what it is and how it works. Because if they did, we would be able to actually create it, not just seemingly counteract or seemingly recreate the effects of it, but actually create it. All right. Now there are two scientists whose names I keep hammering who spoke on this. Warren, Werner Heisenberg and Nikola Tesla. And what Nikola Tesla called this what he called it the ether is what how he described gravity, that it's not what science thinks it is. Okay, so what he called the ether is now being called dark energy or dark matter. The article even said it's this force, or it's a type of energy that they don't understand. They're basically guessing, but they're trying their best at it. So that really needs to be understood, and there is a reason why I keep speaking on that. There's a lot of research, that I really don't go into in depth, but there's a lot of research there that, if you do the research, will really help you understand a lot of things.
All right.
You want to get that last article?
Russia.
Yeah.
All right. Excuse me. Share my screen here. All right. This one comes from Ars Technica. Russia's passive aggressive reaction to SpaceX may mask a deeper truth. Ooh, okay. One of the big questions surrounding the first launch of SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft was how the Russians would react. They have held considerable sway in the International Space Station partnership by controlling access to the orbiting laboratory since the 2011 retirement of NASA's Space Shuttle. So far, the Russian response has been one of throwing small bits of shade here and there, but trying not to be too obvious about it. On Sunday, when SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft docked with the International Space Station, the Russian Space Corporation sequestered cosmonaut Oleg Kononenko in the Russian segment of the station. This was Roscosmos said to the Kononenko could take emergency action in case the Dragon became uncontrollable and crashed into the space station. Wow. After the successful docking, Roscosmos tweeted a Russian language congratulations to NASA, but underscored the fact that flight safety must be above reproach. An hour later, it published a rare tweet in English, sending its sincere compliments to the colleagues from NASA, but without the emphasis on vehicle safety. Neither tweet mentioned SpaceX. Later, Roscosmos said NASA ordered the ship and therefore deserved the congratulations. On Monday, the Russian Space Corporation tweeted again, sharing pictures of Kononenko, NASA's Andy McLean, and Canadian David St. Jacques in their protective masks before entering the Dragon. This was a safety precaution with the new vehicle visiting. It wanted readers to know that the mission had made history another way. For the first time in the history of the station, the crew worked in Russian made IPK gas masks. The tweet stated, uh, okay. Finally, on Tuesday, Russian sources told Sputnik and other media about an unusual smell in the station that a high concentration of isopropyl alcohol was found to be circulating in the air on board the International Space Station following Dragon's arrival. In reality, the concentrations were quite low and disappeared after astronauts on the station used normal procedures to cycle the air. Real politic. So, what is going on here with this passive aggressive reaction? One person who would probably know is Vadim Lukashevich, a Russian based space expert. He was fired from an aerospace think tank in Skolkovo in 2015 after writing articles opposing the transformation of Roscosmos from a government agency into a state corporation. On Monday, he gave an interview to Russian television station Moscow 24, which was published on YouTube and translated for ours by Robinson Mitchell. During the interview, Lukashevich says there are good reasons for the Russians to feel threatened. In the quote below, he referenced leader Dmitry Rogozin, who was sanctioned by the U.S. government in 2014 and thereafter suggested NASA should use a trampoline to get to space. Wow. Um, let's see here. With this launch, even if it was ordered by NASA to private company SpaceX has made Roscosmos null and void. They have shown Roscosmos who. Everyone remembers Rogerzin's remarks about trampolines and such. So in fact, this isn't just resentment. It is a constant major headache for Roscosmos. In the first place, the congratulations message was late. Second, Roscosmos sent out two congratulation tweets, one in English and another completely different text in Russian. So of course this is a sign of resentment. It is the reaction of an unreliable leader who is lagging behind. So really it was strange they, Roscosmos, reacted at all. Bear in mind Roscosmos in fact never gave their approval for the docking. They voiced a number of technical concerns, perhaps even with some basis, but we saw that the docking was simply brilliant as it took place. So yes, this was a reaction of someone left behind. All right.
Yeah,
Um yeah. I remember that after 2011 America had the rise to space on Russia's Soyuz rockets, but it costs, and correct me if I'm wrong, 81 million per seat.
yeah. They could
So
charge that much. Yeah, they could charge that much for per admission.
that's a lot of money they're being left out. They are not receiving anymore after this.
Well, the Russians didn't, they didn't think that this was going to happen, until it actually happened.
Hmm.
Elon Musk put a thorn up their backside. So it's one of those things, Russia, in order for Russia to actually rebound from this, because China actually took one of their the Soyuz style capsules and actually modified it for themselves, and now they can fit, their astronauts on there. So they don't really need Russia for that either. Russia has kind of isolated itself by not reinventing that product because that's an old product from the 60s and 70s, and it's been modified about a dozen times, but it's still an old product or it's still an old vehicle, I should say, for space travel. So although it works, it's flawless now. It's not very usable in comparison to what can be built from a startup perspective. So Russia failed to innovate in these areas, and unfortunately, they paid the price for it by Elon Musk stepping in at the right time in the right place. And if Russia wants to kind of regain themselves from that perspective, they actually would have to tap into Africa and Latin America to help expand their space program so that they can actually um, leverage Russia as a strategic partner for space travel themselves, and that would actually get Russia back into the profitability of space travel too. DE, what's going on?
Hey everybody, how you guys doing? I'm okay.
All right, brother. If you have, do you have any opinion on this?
Easy.
Well, about a few years ago, you remember how our space shuttle was kind of like how it was getting to a position where it was becoming obsolete, and the Russians are in the position that we were in that time.
Right.
So technology is a thing that goes in a cycle, and
Mhm.
it also goes in a circle. Because the United States might invent something. If you go back, you see like the United States invented the radio was invented in the U.S. Then the Japanese turned around and made it, this small something you can carry around in your hand. And
Right.
then again, somebody came along and made a CD player, and then Apple came along and put, so technology goes in cycles, and it also goes around in circles. When it comes back to you, you better be prepared to put your product ahead of everybody else that has gone before you. If you always get bypassed, like we in a position like with that same position in China right now. The Chinese are leaping ahead of everybody because they're stepping on everybody's technology, and the Russians just got stepped on. So instead of trying to catch up, they're wringing their hands and insulting people. You can't do that.
Mhm.
You shouldn't do that. I shouldn't say you can't, but you shouldn't do that.
Mhm.
So what is Russia to do now then? What can they do now?
Well,
What they
Mike
just
just said
done?
it. They gotta what you say, Mike? You gotta
They
go
would have
to
they would have to partner with Africa and Latin America in order to help leverage build out their space program so that those continents and those countries who participate in it would actually use Russia as leverage for their space development. So I mean, Russia could play a strategic role in all these areas, but the thing is that startups have made it a little bit more difficult, to just go directly to NASA, to go directly to Roscosmos and things of that nature. They don't really need to unless they have to. But if Russia was smart, if Putin was smart, he would put out that declaration and actually offer those emerging economies and those emerging countries, um, partnerships in terms of space research that actually would help them greatly because now you can harness the capital of those the financial capital of those countries into your space program, and you can help develop their space program in partnership.
That's smart. But okay, what country you think you're gonna jump at this? Because you think it's gonna be more of a I don't. I'm not. I'm trying to think what country will really jump out there. Like what? Which country you see would go for that? Because I know a lot of them, are in U.S.'s pocket. So, um,
Not necessarily, not necessarily. Their scientific research is still tied in with the best interest of the country. I mean, they're not throwing their scientific research centers out of the window. Look at Argentina. Argentina allowed all that space for China's space program to take place there,
mm.
and United States didn't have too much of a. I mean, they made us think about it, but nothing they could do about it.
Right. So in terms of um, when it comes to the intellectual resource, it's this free game. Pretty much, whoever has the best offer, pretty much is how it works. And you're saying that Putin will have to kind of just take the lead on that and get that going.
Oh, they already have. They've done that with technology called GLONASS,
Mm.
GLONASS. Every smartphone has it. So GLONASS is Russia's version of GPS.
Hmm. I didn't know that.
So GPS works better from east to west, right? So it was developed in the United States, but it works best because the United States is an east to west country. But when you look at the continent of Africa, it's a north to south sort of geographical layout, and that's what GLONASS actually functions best as. So you get a more accurate um, global positioning from your phone because of GLONASS on the continent. So Russia actually gave that to the African continent, and it's actually a new iteration coming out, and I think either it already has come out or it's coming out, that Africans will be able to take advantage of. But my point in saying all this is that those are the capabilities that that's the sort of leverage that Russia has, where they can do data dumps and give all that sort of information to those emerging countries. As far as I know right now, I think about 8 countries in Africa actually have space programs. South Africa, Nigeria has one, Ghana has one, Kenya has one. If I remember correctly, Ethiopia has one, and I think Morocco, Algeria, and I think Egypt.
Mm.
Egypt has a stable space program, so
Do you
they're
foresee
not
like any
they're
any
not they're
Caribbean
not like
islands?
NASA. Go ahead.
Do you foresee any like Caribbean islands kind of gonna jump on that bandwagon too as well? Um, when it comes in terms of 'cause they're like last in the game too, like the Caribbean region. So do you foresee that they're gonna tie into Latin America and get into the game as far as space travel?
I don't know if space travel will be on their agenda. I think mapping out the Caribbean Ocean and trying to determine where the next hurricane is coming from, and um, tsunami, not a tsunami, but earthquakes and things like that. That stuff actually is strategic to their survival more
Mm,
so than space travel. I mean, because they're islands, right? So they can easily be washed away because an earthquake created a tsunami.
true.
Hey, you want to get to this last article?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, let me share my screen here. All right, oops, not that one. All right, this one comes from fee.org. How Elon Musk and other entrepreneurs lowered the cost of space exploration. SpaceX's most significant achievement has been in lowering the launch costs that have limited many space initiatives. On March 2nd, SpaceX plans to launch its first test of an unmanned Dragon vehicle, which is designed to carry humans into low Earth orbit and to the International Space Station. If the test is successful, later this year, SpaceX plans to launch American astronauts from United States soil for the first time since 2011. While a major milestone for a private company, SpaceX's most significant achievement has been in lowering the launch costs that have limited many space activities. While making several modifications to the fuel and engines, SpaceX's major breakthrough have come through recovering and reusing as much of the rocket and launch vehicle as possible. Between 1970 and 2000, the cost to launch a kilogram to space remained fairly steady, with an average of 18,500 per kilogram. When the space shuttle was in operation, it could launch a payload of 27,500 kilograms for 1.5 billion or 54,000 per kilogram. For a SpaceX Falcon 9, the rocket used to access the ISS, the cost is just $2,720 per kilogram. Okay. I'm a space policy analyst, and I've observed the cost has been a major hurdle limiting access to space. Since the 1950s, the high cost of a space program has traditionally put it beyond the reach of most countries. Today, state and private actors alike have have already access to space. And while SpaceX is not the only private company providing launch services, Orbital ATK recently purchased the Northrop Grumman United Launch Alliance, and Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin are also players. It has emerged as the most significant. Frustrated with NASA and the influenced by science fiction writers, Elon Musk founded SpaceX in 2002. Though it suffered several setbacks, in 2008 it launched the first privately funded liquid fuel rocket, the Falcon 1. Falcon 9 flew for the first time this year. Falcon 9 flew for the first time the next year, and in 2012, the Dragon capsule became the first privately funded spacecraft to dock with the ISS. SpaceX has since focused on recovering key parts of the Falcon 9 to enhance reusability and reduce costs. This includes the Falcon 9's first stage, which, once it expands its fuel, falls back through the atmosphere, reaching speeds of 5,200 miles per hour before reigniting its engines to land on a drone recovery ship. In 2018 alone, SpaceX made 21 successful launches. The new Falcon Heavy rocket, a more powerful version of the Falcon 9, launched in February. This rocket can lift 68,800 kilograms, equivalent to more than 27 Asian elephants, to low Earth orbit, and 16,800 kilograms to Mars for just $90 million. Wow. The test payload was Musk's own red Tesla Roadster, with a mannequin named Starman in the driver's seat. In addition to the Crew Dragon test this year, SpaceX is continuing development of its Starship, which will be designed to travel through the solar system and carry up to 100 passengers sometime in the 2020s. Musk also has suggested that the Starship could serve as a foundation for a lunar base. Impact on space exploration. SpaceX's technical advances and cost reduction have changed the direction of U.S. space policy. In 2020, the Obama administration moved away from NASA's Constellation program, which called for the development of a family of rockets that could reach low Earth orbit and be used for long distance space flight. With NASA falling significantly behind schedule because of technological difficulties and budget cuts, the Obama administration was left with a choice of whether to boost funds for NASA or change direction. In 2010, then President Barack Obama toured Kennedy Space Center and even met with Elon Musk to get a first hand look at SpaceX's facilities. The administration chose to reorient the program to focus solely on deep space for missions closer to home. NASA would purchase vehicles from the companies like SpaceX for access to low Earth orbit. Critics objected to budget cuts to NASA, as well as concerns about whether the private sector will be able to follow through on providing launch services. While NASA has struggled to develop its space launch system, an analysis from NASA's Ames Research Center found that the dramatically lower launch costs SpaceX made possible offered greatly expanded opportunities to exploit space for many users, including NASA. The report also suggested that NASA could increase its number of planned missions to low Earth orbit and the ISS precisely because of the lower price tag. In addition to sustain, substantially, oh my goodness, substantially affecting human spaceflight, SpaceX has also launched payloads for countries including Kazakhstan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and most recently Israel. On February 21st, 2019, a Falcon 9 launched a privately built Israeli lunar lander, which, if successful, will be the first privately built lunar probe.
That's cool by now. Yeah, I think we get the gist of this. As it stands, man, we've been talking about this since last year. Um, one in every three startups is going to be a space startup. Um, SpaceX has become the commercial Uber and Lyft for everybody else to get into space. Um, and they have lowered the barriers. They lowered the cars because they did a lot of research and a lot of their stuff. A lot of their lessons are for public consumption now, so you can see where they failed and how much money they spent and what the value is and what it takes to actually get it off the ground. I believe there's another space startup that has 3D printed rockets. I think we covered before. They actually came out of SpaceX and Tesla. So now you're starting to see the um, the ability to actually get your project off the ground is largely fundamentally is largely because of those um, bigger endeavors made up by those startups. Um, you actually can get to you actually can get rockets off the ground now, largely because they've done the research already. So now you have companies like I can't remember their name right now, but they came out of SpaceX. They have 3D printed rockets. That was unheard of 20 years ago. 3D printed rockets. That wasn't even a concept. And now we're talking about building our own cube satellites and actually getting them into space. And a cube satellite would probably cost you no more than 150 bucks at best. A Raspberry Pi. A little bit of ingenuity, some batteries. You probably source them out of China or something like that. Probably cost you 150 bucks.
So it's you're letting people know that it's not difficult to make your mark, um, in this industry. It's not difficult. It's just put in the work, the effort, and do the study, the research. You can make it happen.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I am saying that to a certain extent. I mean, most businesses fail within their first year, regardless of what it is. But what I'm saying is a lot of the elbow, like Lionel was just reading, a lot of that work has already been done. You
yeah.
know, a lot of the heavy lifting has already been done by SpaceX. So now it's just
Mm,
a matter of if you need to get it off the ground, you know where to go to get it off the ground. Um,
mm,
so now it's just about building your lunar lander, your Q satellite, your telescopes and things of that nature. All that stuff could actually be done on the ground. So
mm.
I would put SpaceX in the same category as AWS, Amazon Web Services. They are a transportation service for space exploration, much
Yeah.
like AWS provides computing as a service.
Mm. This is one part of the article that said that they're working on a Starship. They're looking to transport these 100 people. They're saying by 2020. Do you think that that's a reasonable timeline? Um, about 100 people, like you think that's possible that soon?
Uh, if you're going if you're going to low Earth orbit, then yeah, that's possible.
Mm.
They already did what is it Virgin Galactica already put their first guy in space a few weeks ago. Or their first customer into space a few weeks ago. So and they're promising by the end of the year that they're gonna have full tourism packages. So once tourism becomes commonplace within a couple of years, getting stuff off the ground will be fairly cheap because the cost of entry is going to be much lower because those big whales who can afford to take those tourism trips are gonna lower the cost.
Mm.
So this is a perfect time to launch a startup right now. But I wouldn't even go as far as saying a startup. I would say we should treat space exploration in the same way we treat a library. You know, I mean, you go to a library, you don't pay for much. If anything, you get a library card. As long as you have a library card, you could take out a book. You could use the services of the library and things of that nature. Um, and then you go home. You really didn't pay for anything because your tax dollars already paid for it. So how do you transfer the library model into a space startup model where it operates as a nonprofit or as a a socially impactful organization, kind of like the Red Cross.
Mm.
So there's a lot that comes out of it, and these discussions are why on how it's going to happen. You got to have these type of discussions first before you can actually venture into the idea of profitability because you don't have enough capital to even start it as it stands. Um, I believe that other startup, they started with something like $30 million or something like that. I forget the name of that space startup, but I think they started with like $30 million. That's fairly robust compared to SpaceX that has $30 billion to start up.
Mm.
So that's where we are. And, a couple of years from now, by 2021, it's going to be $1 million for a startup. By 2030, you're talking $100,000 to start your own space startup, leveraging all the resources that's already here on the ground.
Mm. That's true.
Yeah, yeah. So your mortgage, your refinancing your mortgage to get your space startup off the ground. It'll probably have the same volatility as Bitcoin, but that's expected. DE, you
And
have
just
anything to add to this?
yeah, go ahead.
Um, my observation of this whole situation with space travel is that um, we're in the position where we between electric cars and um, internal combustion engines.
Hmm.
Is that some people who the solid rocket engine is, I would say, it's obsolete for space travel.
Hmm.
You can get from here to the moon with one, but if you're gonna put people in space, then you need something else, uh, more reliable than a solid rocket engine and less weight. The weight that we are lifting off with a solid rocket engine is what we can put in the people in. And what happens is that I think we got the technology, but there are people who are not willing to allow a significant part of the population of Earth to get into space because then they have no control over them. So we have a big problem as far as space travel, and it's being restricted. It's caused by people restricting it.
People in terms of literacy or bureaucracy.
Oh, it's not bureaucracy. If I had a, if I was a trillionaire, a multi-billionaire, or whatever the case might be, and somebody and I own South America, and whatever is done in South America, they had to come talk to me first. I'm not going to let half of my population go unless it's going to benefit me.
Now, can you prove that?
You know? Look, uh, if you see the Russians building a missile that is what 8, 9 times the speed of sound, what does that tell you? You
War,
know, and we've
battle.
been here, and people have been making these uh, stories about spaceship flying around in the desert and desert sky off California coast for how many years now?
Okay, so what you're saying, powers that be, government, high power people will prevent
Oh yeah,
startups, non high power people from going into space.
I'm going into space. They if
Now,
you if,
how?
if you need it out there, they'll put you out there. If you're not needed, you can't go.
Now, what I'm asking is how.
If you can if you can populate Mars, um, the technology to fly a ship to Mars, you're not gonna have control of it for very long. You know what I'm saying? If somebody else with some cash can build a ship that can. If you can build a ship to get to Mars, you can get outside the solar system.
Well, what I'm asking is how will powers that be, high people in high power, prevent other non-high power people from accessing space?
Um, how does
They could do like they
how does the G8 control the world economy? You know, say this is
That's
not
not
something you
answering my
you sit
question.
down at a table at the highest level. The guy from China is going to sit down at with the guy from America, and they're going to decide. You know what? Let's do what we have to do to get to maintain what we have. That's the way it is. You don't think that Warren Buffett is going to give up his multi-billion-dollar empire to somebody who is just starting up?
yeah
He's going to
yeah
sit down with Bill Gates and everybody else and make a plan on how to keep, you know.
he has a point. De has a point. Because there are rumors that the United States got into the supply chain of Iran's space program and actually blew up that rocket with bad parts recently. The rocket that went up and that was supposed to go up into space actually failed, and it failed
Yeah.
because of the
I,
supply chain sabotage. So it's
now
industrial
that
sector type of
answers
thing.
that answers my question because I read that article.
Right. So you have programs like that, or I should say, operations going around like that that can actually cause a whole lot of unrest into someone's space program. Now, would they do that to Africans? How much is it worth? What kind of satellite are they putting up? Intelligence, central intelligence, any state intelligence would be looking at all of this stuff and trying to determine um, whether or not it's viable to go after someone's space program. I mean, there's rumors that the European space agencies Mars landing last year or the year before last was actually sabotaged by United States and Britain. So I don't know, if to De's point, I think that there is some legitimacy there, that it can happen. It's just one of those things. You just got to make sure you keep your stuff under wraps, and if you're trying to get it off the ground, you might have to build your own rocket from scratch.
If you got to look at it this way, if um if the
Now
U.S.
I
was
know
going to
all the
build
esoteric ways that I understand esotericism, whatever it's called. I understand that. Do you think this they'll let this, or do you think someone will do that? That I understand. I understand all of that. But to come from a place where it can happen, and we talking about it can happen, the different ways it can, to then go to esoteric, then say, well, you think they're gonna let you do that? That's I don't like that.
a
I
well,
don't. I don't want to spread that type of information. What I'm looking at is how we
okay.
know these things are possible. Yes, we know people can sabotage. How? Not some spooky. Do you think they'll? Well, do you think they'll let your black ass do it? No, I don't want that. How? And then go from there. That is what I'm trying to get at.
I understand what you're saying, but if I worked in a factory and I know I work on a system where I know that the U.S. could the system we're working on um, will keep will prevent the Russians from launching a missile. That the missile will climb into the air and just fall back to the ground. I could come to you and say, look, do you think this is possible for anybody to do this? I can't come to you and say, hey, I know this and this and this, and we are doing this and this and this. It's like I hope you understand the situation.
Well, that's that. that situation is when you are when you are actively doing it and you see, well, this isn't happening, and then you come up with a few brainstorming sessions and say, well, do you think this person will do you think this is a possibility? We're not even in those stages. This is a thought that we're trying to push to reality, and it's almost like people are crushing the idea even before you get up and go start it. I want to get to that space where we have physical rockets, physical area where we're going to launch from, and then when those things happen, we go from there.
Mm.
I don't want this to be. I look at this, me personally. I look at this as something that I want to do. Not, well, black people can do this and then leave it as is, because that's tantamount to, well, black people need to do this. If black people this, that type of rhetoric irritates me.
All right, Jack, you have any last words on this before we close out? Going once, going twice. All right, so I guess we'll close out now because we're 8 minutes past the hour. All right, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you on Wednesday for geopolitics.
All right. Good night, everybody.